All right, thank you. Sorry about the delay. All right. We'll go to agenda item D, call back to order and Pledge of Allegiance, if we would. Ms. Caputo, there you are. Okay.
We have two students with us tonight to lead us in the pledge. Cole Fontenot is a sixth grader at Chisholm Trail, and Adele Eichmiller is a second grader at Deepwood Elementary. So, girls, if you'd come up.
Okay.
And if everyone would stand, please, for the pledge. Ready?
Pull the microphone down.
There you go. Whenever you're ready. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the
Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee. Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, students. Thank you for volunteering, getting our meeting started. I love it when students do that. All right, we'll go to any motions coming out of closed session. Board members.
Yes, Mr. President. I move that we authorize the administration to declare Cadence McShane Construction Company in default of its agreement on the McNeil High School construction project as necessary, and that we further authorize the administration to exercise necessary contractual remedies and or negotiate and enter a resolution in the best interest of the district.
Second.
Got a motion and a second as presented regarding Cadence McShane authorizing the district reach a resolution as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Any other motions coming out of closed session? Mr. Moses.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Trustees ratify and approve the contract with Broadband Legal Strategies to appeal the E-rate decision as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to ratify the E-rate as disclosed Broadband Legal Strategies as discussed in closed session. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 6-0. All right, thank you very much. Go to agenda item E, adoption of minutes, E1.
I move that the board approve the minutes for the board meetings held on September 26th and October 3rd, 2019 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the meetings held September 26th and October 3rd, 2019 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to agenda item F1, public communications. I'm going to read this script. We have some topics. We are slightly changing. I may ask Mr. Ponick to step up here in a moment and reiterate the process, but I'm going to read this real quick. If you would kind of reinforce this. But at each regular meeting, the board will afford the general public an opportunity to speak to the board regarding matters of concern or interest to the district. And other than the character of any student, staff, or board member, concerns or complaints regarding specific individuals should not be raised in public forum. They should be considered separately according to applicable board policies. The board requests that comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. I'd like to remind the audience and the viewers that the comments of the speakers reflect their own positions or opinions. No audience member will be permitted to engage in any conduct that is disruptive or threatening toward any speaker or other person. The board may not discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item portion of the agenda. Therefore, board members may not discuss the comments of the speakers. We cannot discuss the comments of the speakers. Please understand that a lack of response from board members does not indicate agreement or approval of the comments. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Mr. Math will be the timekeeper. You have a timer on the on the podium, so please be observant of that. So with that, Mr. Ponick, would you reinforce or reiterate the new legal rules and our guideline?
So according to your board policies, if anyone has a specific complaint against an employee or a member of this organization, they are to proceed under those policies and they can get redress that way. This forum is designed to hear general concerns about practices and policies in general, but not about specific individuals. And so that should not form a part of the presentations you hear today from the citizens.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have a handful of speakers on items not on the agenda, so we'll go through those first, and then we have another handful on topics on the agenda, so we will wait to get to those. It looks like they're all, maybe they're all on the same topic. Looks like they're all on the same topic. So once we get to that, we'll do the presentation and then take the input from the community input from there, because some of the answers, some of your questions may be answered during the presentation. So with that, we're going to go to the items, public comment on regarding items not on the agenda. And first up will be Debbie Simmons regarding parents' rights. After that, if you'd be ready, is Jean McNulty will be next. So, Ms. Simmons. So, yes, please hand that to Ms. Any documentation, just hand that to Ms. Aguilera, and then go ahead and take the podium.
Hello. My name is Debbie Simmons. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for your attention. Today I'm bringing to you the opportunity to sign on to a proclamation, and I've provided enough copies for everyone, and I will share it with you now. In recognition of the vital importance for education, excellence, and meaningful collaboration between the school district and families, we recognize November as Parents' Rights in Education Month. Whereas we acknowledge parents are a child's first and foremost educator and have the primary responsibility for the education, care, and training of their children. And whereas education is comprised of a range of activities by which families and communities teach knowledge and skills, including ethical and behavioral norms and traditions. And whereas fairness and equity must be afforded to all students and families in the school district. And whereas public schools need cooperation and support of all parents. And whereas the parent-child relationship shall be honored and supported by teachers, counselors, administrators, and school board members. Therefore, and what I'm asking you to do is to sign on to this, declaring November Parents' Rights in Education Month, affirming the constitutional right of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. So today I'm here not to complain, not to bring concerns, but to share with you an opportunity to declare November an opportunity for parents' rights in education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Up next will be Jean Ann McNulty. That's right. Okay, and then after that will be Megan Sita. Okay.
All right. Esteemed trustees, Superintendent Flores, Round Rock ISD staff, and community members, my name is Janine McNulty, and I'm here tonight representing Round Rock ISD Voices for a Sustainable Future. We are a growing group of now over 300 Round Rock ISD parents, students, employees, and community members. Our group's purpose is to promote and hasten the adoption of a modern, district-wide environmental sustainability policy that will build sustainability into operations and education throughout Round Rock ISD. Our initial priorities include the elimination of styrofoam lunch trays, development of a district waste reduction plan, and evaluation of all district rooftops for solar. We feel strongly that the district can and should pursue these goals, and we are here again tonight to reiterate our commitment to engaging in this important conversation. When we spoke to the board at the September meeting, we presented a long list of reasons for pursuing sustainability in Round Rock ISD. I'd like to extend my thanks to the board for acknowledging our concerns toward the end of that meeting. Our members truly appreciated the immediate confirmation that the board hears our concerns. I'd also like to thank Trustee Amy Weir for following up over the past month. We need sustainability champions at every level to step up in order to bring about a better future for our learning community. Tonight, I'd like to specifically address why we are asking the board to adopt a district-wide sustainability policy and why a standing sustainability advisory committee is needed. As I'm sure you're aware, there are many dedicated sustainability champions among our district's families, employees, and students. As a result, across our district, there are amazing things happening on our campuses. Wells Branch AIA, my home school, has an incredible school garden. Jolie Johnson has worked with EcoRise to implement a sustainability curriculum. And a group of high school students recently advocated for water bottle refilling stations at their campuses. I wish I had more examples, but the fact that I don't is indicative of the problem. Unfortunately, the lack of a clear commitment from the district to sustainability in the form of a district policy inhibits the visibility and growth of these kinds of programs. Instead of there being systems in place to ensure these great ideas are grown, refined, and propagated to other campuses, many sustainability initiatives remain siloed, and they die on the vine over time as key champions transition or become disheartened by a lack of operational support. I am speaking on behalf of a group. Will I have 5 minutes?
Would you group raise your hand? Rest of the group? Okay.
I'm almost done.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. So they remain siloed, and they often die on the vine over time as key champions transition or become disheartened by the lack of operational support. Without district policy to underpin these programs, it is far less likely they will succeed in the long term. AISD's sustainability manager shared with me that the adoption of their sustainability policy has allowed them to write sustainability into job descriptions up and down the organization, so that now every employee, from the school custodian to the COO and everyone in between, has a clearly defined role in supporting the district's sustainability goals. Where our sustainability champions often feel like lonely martyrs paddling upstream, champions in an organization with sustainability at its core feel valued and can be rewarded as leaders of a team reaching toward a common goal. The result is broader, more elegant, and successively refined programs that take advantage of economies of scale. As I mentioned last month, our initial priorities, getting rid of styrofoam, reducing waste, implementing solar, are far more are absolutely achievable. There is a roadmap, there are models, there are mentors, and there are resources. What we need is simply the will and the persistence to make sustainability a priority. A standing advisory committee on sustainability would embody that will and persistence. Regular meetings focused on sustainability between those people most engaged with the topic and those most able to affect change are sure to bring about consistent progress toward our sustainability goals. To that end, once again, Round Rock ISD Voices for a Sustainable Future respectfully asks the board to formally discuss the formation of a standing advisory committee on sustainability, comprised of members of the community, district employees, representatives of resource organizations, and mentors. The committee would work to develop sound policy, priority, and process recommendations. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good evening. All right, thank you. Next up is Megan Sita. Sita, is that right? Are you speaking for yourself or a group?
For the group.
Same group?
Same group.
Same group, only one spokesperson gets 5 minutes for the
Okay,
group.
no, I'm just doing a 2 minute.
yourself. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Flores and members of the school board. I'm back representing the teachers of Round Rock Voices for a Sustainable Future. We're here because we want the district to adopt more sustainable operations, such as eliminating styrofoam cafeteria trays and fulfilling state-mandated recycling requirements. Did you know that currently our recycling gets dumped into the trash? Students and teachers are unclear on what recycling we have. We don't have marked signage or receptacles, and there's no oversight of the program of the recycling, so it gets dumped into the trash for convenience. We need a streamlined program, custodial staff education, and oversight. This seems like an area we can tackle without spending additional money. Did you know that styrofoam takes more than 500 years to decompose? It may never decompose. So those 25,000 styrofoam trays that we're throwing away daily as a district, they're here to stay. And so is this group. We're here to stay, and we're growing because more and more people demand that we as a district take our children's futures seriously. Styrofoam photodegrades when in the sun and water, breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces. There it gets eaten by fish and animals and re-enters the food chain to humans. Made from gasoline, styrofoam is a proven carcinogen. As a result, styrofoam has been banned in multiple cities throughout the U.S. as well as the state of Maine. Do we really want to be responsible for disposing of 50 million trays per year? They're poisoning our planet and are jeopardizing the futures of our students and children. As a Round Rock ISD educator, I love this district. Round Rock is filled with caring and hardworking people. Teachers are provided with superior training and cutting-edge curriculum and resources. It's time for us to up our game in the area of sustainability. Austin ISD has already eliminated the trays and has implemented a number of sustainability reforms. It's time for us to start making the changes, not all at once, but it's time to begin. We know that our estimates of tray use is conservative. A great first step would be providing us with the actual number of trays we are using daily, monthly, and yearly. Thank you, School Board, for your service to Round Rock and for considering this.
Okay, thank you. Next up will be Sierra Romero, and after that will be Snehal Prika.
Good evening, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a member of Educators in Solidarity and also a parent to children who attend Central Texas schools. I'm reading an anonymous letter that was written by a student, a senior at Early College High School, who feared retribution if it were read by their person here. So I'm going to begin. When I joined Early College High School, I was the new kid. I was a stranger amongst those who were already friends. It was a struggle to find the support I needed, and even when I did, there was something wrong. In my community, I heard kids using the N-word so flagrantly. It filled me with discomfort, a feeling of dread that I felt too uncomfortable to voice. These people who knew each other since the beginning of their careers weren't my peers, not yet, so I turned to my administration. I sent an email requesting a meeting and voiced my concerns. When I did, I was told that I had to tell names. When I expressed discomfort, I was pressured by the administration to say them, rather than appealing to the other forms of authority in the school. Under pressure, I said a name. When I did, one of the administrators shrugged dismissively and said, "Well, he's Latino." I was flustered by the response and wasn't sure what to say. Since then, I have detached myself entirely from my administration. I have known since my first months of this school, if I want something done, going to them is a fruitless endeavor. I have never felt they were on my side, and it's something I've made peace with. However, this is something the generations after me should not have to do. The freshmen, the sophomores, the juniors following should always feel like they have someone on their side. Thank you for your time. I urge the board to help develop an actionable plan for training all administrators and staff on cultural proficiency so that all administrators and staff are able to handle situations like these with more care, sensitivity, and dedication than the student who wrote the letter experienced, because all students, every single one, deserves to feel safe at school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romero. Up next is Snehal. There you go. Thank you. Okay. For yourself or for a group?
With the group.
Okay. Raise your hand back there. Okay. Right. Okay. All right.
Good evening, respected Superintendent Dr. Flores, President Chadwell, Board of Trustees, and everyone. I'm Snehal Pirke, mom of two happy Raiders, and it is my honor to speak today as the president of the RRISD Council of PTA, the best council PTA for the best school district. Our council PTA mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all our children. We have 53 local PTAs working hard every day to fulfill this mission in their own unique ways. As an example, our Cactus Ranch Elementary PTA has been in the news recently for their unique fundraising campaign that inspired a culture of kindness in Cactus Ranch Elementary and beyond. New things like MOB, Men of Berkman, getting dads involved. You will be hearing more from all of our local PTAs this year. They are eager to share all the great things that are happening on our campuses. Not only that, all our PTAs are doing awesome at local level this year, but they're also getting recognized as at national PTA level. 4 of our RRISD PTAs were honored as 2019-2021 National PTA School of Excellence Award winners. Cedar Ridge High School, Noel Grisham Middle School, Ridgeview Middle School, and Westwood High School. Our Anderson Mill PTA also won the prestigious National PTA Reflections Award, Reflections Arts Enhancement Grant Award. There are only 2 of these awarded every year at the national PTA level, so that's incredible. Several of our students across all our PTAs are working hard on their reflections entries now, and we are excited about the possibilities for all of them. We are off to a great start with our Closed Closet program that serves our students in need. And thanks to all our PTAs and schools for volunteering and doing the clothing drives, we have served over 200 clients in just a couple of months. Everyone at Council PTA is working hard, helping and training our local PTAs, reaching new heights, winning awards, and making a difference. Texas PTA Awards, we have 14 Golden Apple, 19 Early Bird, and 10 Head Start Awards, and several more, such as Great Oaks, with their 5-year high award. Please stay tuned to all these things to on our website, rrisdpta.org, and on social media at rrisdpta. On October 19th, Texas PTA is turning 110. Yes, PTA is the oldest and largest child advocacy association in America. 110 years of backing the future, parents, teachers, students, all of us together. RRISD Council of PTAs is 16,906 members strong today and growing. We sincerely appreciate your awesome leadership and support for this incredibly important partnership. Many thanks to everyone working hard at our district office and all our schools, making our district the best school district. With all our dedicated PTAs, partners, and entire PTA community, together, we look forward to an awesome year ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Perica. Okay, next up will be David Schmidt, and after that will be Jeannie Feller.
Good evening, President Chadwell and members of the board. At the October 3rd board meeting, I shortened my remarks because of a statement made by the attorney to the board about public comments. In the follow-up, I sent him my remarks and feedback was provided. My remarks did not violate Texas Open Meeting Act rules, however, did conflict with existing board policy. I would encourage that the policy committee revise district policy immediately to conform with Texas state law. At the same meeting, a second issue. In the discussion from the dais about the formation of a district police department, the exchange was insightful. A trustee who is a candidate for a county commissioner seat, a partisan political office,
Mr. President, point of order. I think we all know who he's referring to.
did not want politics played when it comes to the safety and security of our children. Neither do I, nor anyone else I know. Any elected official who plays politics with this issue should pay the political price. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And then last speaker is Jeannie Feller. Jeannie Feller.
Hi, my name is Jenny Fuller, and I'm a school volunteer for Terra Vista Elementary School, and I am also a DPS certified school safety officer. I'm here to talk today about a little bit about our conundrum that we have going on, and I'm concerned that there's no softer target than an elementary school in the school system. As it stands now, we don't have a resource officer at our school. I don't know that I've ever seen them. Why are we leaving the most vulnerable in such a circumstance when we have others at middle schools and high schools? It makes no sense to me. I'm not sure if you have gone through this or not, but I think that you should consider the use of the Guardian Plan. We have it here in Texas. Why not use it? I'm at the school all the time. I am certified. I would be under the Guardian Plan. I'm not a teacher, but I'm there 3 days out of the week minimum. And I would volunteer to be part of that program for the school. The cost is minimal. And if you do that, you will have a first responder on the scene should anything occur. That will stop the incident 95% of the time, or at least prevent it from hurting other students. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller. Thank you. All right, we'll go to agenda item, so it concludes our public communications. We'll go to agenda item G, Superintendent's Report. Number 1 is overview of Special Education 504 and Dyslexia Services. Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board and community. We do have 3 items tonight on the superintendent's report, and the first one is the overview of the Special Education and 504 and Dyslexia Services, and we will have Mandy Estes, our Chief of Teaching and Learning, as well as Marie Gonzalez, our Executive Director for Special Education.
So without just want to reiterate that we'll take the comments after your presentation. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, do the presentation first, and we'll take the comments just for the public's information. All right, thank you.
All right, President Chadwell, trustees, and Dr. Flores, we do appreciate the opportunity to present this overview to you tonight about special education and 504 programming with a special emphasis on dyslexia. October is Dyslexia Awareness Night, and we have many individuals in the audience tonight who proudly serve students with dyslexia. Marie will be introducing them later on in the presentation. I also want to recognize Kimberly Berry Corey, who's our Director of Dyslexia, who was unfortunately unable to be here tonight. And I also want to put in a quick plug. We're going to be featured later this week on a local television news station for our unique ability to provide in-house dyslexia service training to our teachers here in the district. So we're quite excited about that and hope you're able to catch that. I think it's on KView. This overview will be provided by Marie Gonzalez with also assistance from Ryan Smith, who's the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. So I will turn it over to Marie.
Good evening, President Chadwell, Board of Trustees, Dr. Flores. It is a privilege to be here with you this evening to share with you some information about the department that I am honored to supervise and support, Special Education and 504. As Mandy said, my name is Marie Gonzalez. I have been in Round Rock ISD my entire career, 24 years, and all of those years spent in service to students with disabilities. Also here with us tonight, I'm very proud to introduce my immediate team of area directors of Special Education in 504. And if you ladies could stand for a minute. We have with us Kelly McAnally, Melinda Lambert, Angela Solis, Heidi Lambert, and Summer Neiman. I'm blessed to have a very talented and knowledgeable team. Thank you, ladies. Special education is not someplace that students go. It's not something they're in. It's not something that replaces general education. All students are general education students first, and some students are then eligible for additional services and supports. So who is eligible for special education? There are 2 equally important prongs for special education eligibility. The first is identification of a disability. The second, an educational need for an individualized education plan. The Texas Administrative Code outlines 13 disability categories. Out in the world, there exist many other conditions, but these are the only disabilities that can qualify a student for special education services. And you'll notice that the learning disability category has 7 different disabilities. Dyslexia is one of the conditions that may qualify a student as having a learning disability in reading. So the existence of one of those disability categories is the first prong. The second prong is an educational need, meaning a student must also show a need for instruction as a result of that disability, instruction that's not available through general education. The educational need can be academic or social-emotional in nature, and it means that the disability has been so impactful as to cause a gap in skills that won't be addressed through general education curriculum and instruction. So how do we make decisions around these 2 prongs? The presence of a disability is identified through evaluation. An evaluation completed by the school district is called a full individual evaluation. It's commonly abbreviated to FIE. Parents can also complete an evaluation privately, and those are frequently referred to as an independent education evaluation, or IEE. Once we have an evaluation, we bring together a student's educational team to review the evaluation. If it establishes one of the 13 disability categories that we just looked at, The team then makes a decision as to whether there also exists an educational need. The team includes a general education teacher, a special education teacher, an administrator, someone qualified to interpret the evaluation, such as a diagnostician or an LSSP, and always our parents. Sometimes we also include the student if that's appropriate. This group sits down together for an admission review and dismissal, or ARD meeting, to look at the educational need. The ARD committee makes the determination if a student qualifies or does not qualify. And if the student qualifies for special education, then that ARD committee is tasked with developing an individualized education plan. Sometimes out in the world, there's confusion between what is special education versus 504. We use those terms a lot. To begin with, they're very different laws. Special education is defined under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, while 504 is a section of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. IDEA applies to public education, so ISDs and charter schools, but not private schools and not post-secondary institutions. 504 is a non-discrimination law, and it applies to any institution that receives federal funding, which does include public schools. IDEA has the two prongs we've been talking about, the disability plus the educational need, whereas 504 applies when there's a disability that impacts a major life activity. It's a much broader standard. It's not limited to the 13 disability categories that are true for special education. And the life activities that can be impacted include a wide variety of things: walking, talking, learning, eating, speaking, hearing, seeing. Under IDEA, we provide specialized instruction designed for the individual needs of a student, whereas 504 requires the provision of reasonable accommodations, the non-discrimination statute. Students who qualify under IDEA have ARD meetings to develop their IEP, and students who qualify through 504 have an individual accommodation plan. We more commonly refer to it as a 504 plan. So in this diagram, the outer circle represents all students, and within that, we do have students with disabilities who don't require any supports through 504 or special education. A smaller group qualify for 504 accommodations, and then, of course, we have some students who are eligible for special education. And the thing I like most about this diagram is that it doesn't have special education off to the right, out in left field. Our students who are eligible for special education are part of all of our students. They're general education students first, and they are eligible for any general education supports. Special education doesn't replace that. It's in addition to that. As that graphic suggests, there are students who have a disability, but who do not require either 504 accommodations or an IEP. Those students are able to access the general education environment and curriculum without 504 or special education. An example might be a student who utilizes a wheelchair but is otherwise able to independently access the physical environment of a school, or a student who has ADHD but has developed her own coping strategies and skills to work through and around her disability. I want to highlight a recent court case out of Copperas Cove. In this case, the original hearing officer said that the school district was required to make a student with dyslexia eligible for special education based on the diagnosis of dyslexia alone. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals came around and said, "You've completely ignored the educational need prong." They specifically noted where a child is being educated in the regular classroom of a public school with only minor accommodations and is making educational progress, that child does not need special education. So, once a student is eligible for special education, what does that mean? It means that a student is guaranteed a free and appropriate public education. It's commonly abbreviated to FAPE. The free part means we don't charge for any special education services, and the appropriate part is these remaining four components. First, that our services are individualized for a particular student based on his or her evaluation and his or her present levels of performance. Second, that we provide these services in a setting with non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate for that individual student. That's a child's least restrictive environment. It does not always mean 100% of the child's time will be in the general education setting. There may be a need for modified or alternate curriculum if the grade level TEKS don't meet that child's needs. The third bullet point, it's the fourth one, but it's the third one about appropriate, is making sure we're collaborating with all stakeholders. That educational team I referenced earlier, you have multiple important perspectives, including our parents. And the last one, we want to make sure that we're proposing a program for each child that is designed to help that child make educational progress. So what does progress mean? The courts have ruled that progress means different things for different students. The Supreme Court Rowley standard is that students who are in primarily general education settings, so their special education services are pushed in, if those students are earning passing grades and are advancing from grade level to grade level, just like a non-disabled peer, that is indicative of progress. More recently, the Supreme Court ruled in the Andrew F. standard that students with a very different profile, students who have either very heavily modified or even an alternate curriculum, for those students, as a district, we're tasked with making sure we set ambitious goals and then putting forth a program to help them make reasonable progress in light of their unique circumstances. So here in Round Rock ISD, how do we provide FAPE? I have always felt blessed to work in a district that has a very wide range of services and supports. As you can see, we start very early. Through our early childhood interventions, we serve students who have a hearing or a vision loss. We have, for 3 to 5-year-olds, our program that was previously known as PPCD, the Preschool Program for Children with Disabilities. That is now undergoing a statewide name change to ECSE, Early Childhood Special Education. And those services meet all sorts of different disability needs: physical, cognitive, social, emotional, speech, language, articulation. That's our Apple and Pear program. Once a student is school-aged, so that 5 to 18 years old, we have many services that are provided in the general education environment. We also provide resource classes for more intensive intervention. And we have various programs that do both, pushing in and pulling out. They're more fluid instructional arrangements depending on the needs of the individual student. Some students need a very different curriculum than that provided in general education, and for those students we offer functional programming. And you can see we have several different types. All of them provide academics that are distilled down to the essence of the TEKS, and some are differentiated to be able to focus on communication skill development or to attend to the needs of students who are medically fragile. Having a continuum of services means being able to serve students in least restrictive settings like general education and resource. It also means we have settings at the other end of the spectrum, much more restrictive settings. We have a self-contained campus, and we also serve students in the hospital or even in the home, depending on their individual needs. Having a continuum of service means we start with babies. We also serve students who have completed their high school credits, but who still require special education to meet their needs as they transition to life beyond high school. And having started my own career as a deaf education teacher, I'm really proud that Round Rock ISD is home to the Capital Area Regional Day School Program for the Deaf. We have a shared services agreement with 19 different sending districts to serve that student population. We also have many different types of instructional and related services. These are all determined through an evaluation and an ARD committee decision. This is a thorough but not exhaustive list. We never say in special education we don't do that, but rather we look at the needs of the individual student, and then we determine what services are needed to meet those needs. Round Rock ISD is very proud to partner with a parent advisory group titled CPAC, and I'd like to take a minute to introduce our president, Ms. Cherrieth Watson, and our vice president, Ms. Heather Wallace. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank both these ladies for their service to our district and their support of fellow parents of students with disabilities. They do this by partnering with our special education parent liaisons to organize monthly informational meetings, luncheons. They have casual coffees, both English and Spanish-speaking meetings, where parents can share and support one another. The work our Round Rock ISD CPAC has done is so renowned that we have neighboring districts coming to ask us, how did you get this started? Can you help us start our own? And both these ladies have been gracious enough to meet with some parents from other districts to help them get started with their own CPACs. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight, and I know one of the areas you're especially interested in learning more about is our dyslexia services. I mentioned earlier there are 13 disability categories, one of which is a specific learning disability. Within that category, there are 7 types of learning disabilities: basic reading, reading fluency, reading comprehension, math calculation, math problem solving, written expression, and oral expression. One of the conditions that can lead to an eligibility of a learning disability in reading is dyslexia. And dyslexia services can be accessed through 504 or through special education depending on the needs of the individual student. So thinking back to what we were talking about, 504, to be eligible for 504, a student has to have the disability. It has to impact a major life area, and reading is one of those. For special education eligibility, they have to have the disability plus the educational need for individualized services not found in general education. This year, Round Rock ISD has decoupled our dyslexia services from our intervention services. We've established a director of dyslexia separate and apart from our RTI team, and as Mandy said, our director is Kimberly Berry-Corey. She wanted very badly to be here tonight, but unfortunately she was already scheduled to be out of town when this presentation was calendared. If I could have our dyslexia evaluation team stand up and be recognized. In addition to Kimberly, we have 2 lead evaluators, Monica Santos and Donna Wise. We have 7 evaluators, and we have 2 Wilson trainers. One of those trainers is Miss Wanda McMillian. She's our Just Words trainer, and she also evaluates. So she's actually a number in both of those categories on the slide. She wears 2 hats. The other trainer is Miss Katie Bryan. We're so proud of Miss Bryan, who you may remember from a previous board update, has completed the intensive training needed to become our first in-house certified Wilson trainer, one of only a handful in the state. This means that Round Rock ISD now has the capacity to train and certify teachers as Level 1 Wilson Certified Practitioners, which is a way our campus dyslexia service providers can earn the CALP certification. CALP stands for Certified Academic Language Practitioner. Thank you so much, team. This year, Round Rock ISD has also designated a personnel allocation, or part of one, or more than one, at each campus for dyslexia services. How many allocations is dependent on the number of students at each campus and the needs that are there. These teachers have received training compliant with the TEA Dyslexia Handbook, and they're the ones who can now access our in-district pathway to becoming a CALP, should they so choose. I think you're 1 ahead, sir. Thank you. So how do we identify dyslexia in students? It can happen several different ways. We do universal screeners 3 times each year up through 7th grade. And there are screenings done mid-year in kindergarten and first, using the AIMSWeb Plus to identify students who are at risk for having characteristics of dyslexia or other reading difficulties. These students are provided research-based interventions and then are closely monitored by a campus student support team. At that age, there is still a wide range of reading skill development that may be typical and not related to a disability. Some kids simply learn to read sooner than other kids. Identifying a student with a lifelong disability is not a bad thing, but it's not a small thing either. And it's a responsibility that we take to heart. We take that responsibility very seriously. Teachers in these early grades are on the lookout for signs that a student may be struggling with reading decoding or reading fluency, either of which could be indicators of dyslexia and which may ultimately lead to a referral for dyslexia evaluation. And of course, a parent can request an evaluation at any time. Because dyslexia supports are available as a general education service, a student may be taught using a research-based dyslexia program even while the evaluation is pending. So with dyslexia services available both through 504 and through special education, how do our student support teams know whether to make a general ed or a special ed referral? This flow chart is page 35. It's right out of the TEA Dyslexia Handbook, and it has excellent guidance for decision making. Our campus administrators, who are the 504 contacts, have received training at the beginning of this year and the beginning of last year. And of course, we have a team of area directors of special ed and 504, as well as our director of dyslexia, who can support campuses when they have questions or concerns or need guidance. We've also developed an internal training website which campuses can access. That covers key components of high-quality dyslexia service delivery models and is very nearly ready to launch. So once there's a referral for dyslexia evaluation, then what? There is no exact timeline required by the Dyslexia Handbook, but our district goal is to match the legal timeline required for special education evaluations, which is 45 school days. In an effort to get our dyslexia testing queue closer to that timeline, Round Rock ISD has increased the number of evaluators from 4 at the start of the 18-19 school year to 10 currently, including an additional bilingual evaluator. In addition, we lengthened our evaluators' contract year. Our lead evaluators went from 187 days to 226, and all others went from 187 days to 210, so we're able to continue testing well into the summer. As a result, we are currently testing students who were referred last month in September, meaning right now we are within our goal of 45 school days or less. The state has been kind enough to give us a dyslexia allotment this year, but as you can see, Round Rock ISD is allocating almost twice as much as we're receiving in state dollars toward dyslexia evaluations and services. That amount here doesn't even include the money spent on training and materials, which is an additional $70,000. That's all over and above what the state is providing us. So I want to take 1 minute and acknowledge the board. Thank you all for making services to our students with dyslexia such a priority. A quick look at dyslexia by the numbers. We have over 2,100 students in Round Rock ISD identified with dyslexia. Close to 1,600 are served through general education and almost 600 served through special education. We completed 630 dyslexia evaluations last school year. That was 200 more than the previous year. Of those, 417 students were identified with dyslexia. So what's the difference between being served in general ed versus special education for dyslexia? General education employs programs such as Wilson, which is very regimented in its service delivery time and pacing requirements. Special education services, on the other hand, can be authorized by an ARD committee to modify the amount of time and the pacing. Special educators may also need to take portions of different programs or pair a program with other strategies to meet the needs of the individualized student. If a student is making progress in a general education service, we wouldn't want to move to a modified version of it. And we definitely don't want to duplicate services. We don't want to have the exact same programming available in special education and in general education, because that wouldn't be honoring a student's least restrictive environment. At the beginning of my presentation, I told you that all students are general education students first, and that some are then eligible for additional services and supports. The entire special education process is focused on identifying deficits that result from an impactful disability. And we have to be very careful not to fall prey to deficit thinking about children. I started out talking about the fact that special education is not a place. It is also not a thing that students are. We don't have autistic students. We don't have dyslexic students. We don't have emotionally disturbed students. We just have students. We have kids who are whole, real, three-dimensional human beings who have gifts and strengths and skills and talents and interests, and who also happen to have a disability in another area. It doesn't make it a defining characteristic. One way to honor that is first-person language, and it goes like this. We say a student with a disability, not a disabled student. A student who is eligible for special education, not a SPED student. A student who utilizes a wheelchair, not a physically handicapped student. And it's more than just being politically correct. This is a picture of my parents and my two kids and two of my nephews. And in this picture is someone with a hearing impairment, someone with autism, someone who is gifted at math, someone who's an avid reader, someone with severe attention deficit, someone who plays trombone, someone who's a talented artist, someone who loves chemistry, someone with very bad knees. And not one of those things is a defining characteristic about any of them. I believe that language is powerful, and how we talk about things impacts how we think about things, and how we think about things impacts everything else we do. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Appreciate it. All right. Board members, any questions for her right now while she's there? Ms. Weir.
I just had a couple questions. When you said teachers are on the lookout, is there a special training that you're doing with teachers in those lower grades so that they are know what to look for and
Part of it is the new kindergarten and first grade screenings, so they're much more aware of the possibility for dyslexia. We also have dyslexia service providers at every campus. We've brought those in for centralized training, and then the expectation is that those folks and the administrators who've had training go back and teach the teachers what to look for. So yes, ma'am.
And then I actually just had a question. You said the Wilson trainer, and you're going to be on KView. How long of a program is that? If a teacher wanted to be a CALP, what does that look like for them?
I think to be a certified level 1, it's a 2-year program, but a CALP is less intensive.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. So the dyslexia service provider or any teacher can sit for the CALP exam after they've completed the level 1 certification. And it takes a school year to complete that level 1 certification. It took our trainer 2.5, maybe 3 years to complete the certification to become a trainer. But we have about a full cohort right now of dyslexia service providers in the training cohort to become level 1.
And how many can they train at a time?
I think it's 25.
25 is the limit. And one of the things that we didn't really talk about was sort of a little more like of the raw numbers that I had asked about, like just the number of kids that have been identified. I mean, we did have a sheet for this school year, but just sort of roughly last year, the number of like first graders and second graders through this universal screening. How many? It's just that 630 that were caught during that universal screening. I wasn't quite sure I was working the numbers correctly.
Sure.
Yeah, we may have to get you those numbers. We read your question R being, so it was probably interpreted on my part as this year.
This year.
Yeah, so we can certainly get those numbers for you.
Okay. Yeah, I do that a lot with the numbers. Sorry. I'm not really a numbers person, so I was like, okay, there's 630, but yeah, if you could let us know. Thank you.
We can do that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Vesson, then Mr. Moses.
So I saw in our flow chart that the second step is just receiving parental consent. How many of is that typically most people give parental consent? Is that have we had a problem at all with that, or?
I don't know statistics-wise. Certainly some parents, the idea that your child has a disability can be impactful news. Some parents have suspected it enough that it's not that surprising. Have we had trouble getting consent? I would guess, and this is just a professional guess, that most of the time we were able to gain consent.
So it's not, you wouldn't say it's a significant problem that we have as a district gaining consent?
I don't believe so, no, ma'am.
And then I just had asked a question, you guys answered it, but I just wanted people to know. So right now we get a weight from the legislature of 0.1. So that means like a kid with dyslexia, is considered 1.1. That in terms of the weight of per student funding. And I asked, what would we need that weight to be to actually cover the services that we're providing? Just because, we have another legislative session and, hey, why not ask for more? So what is the weight that we would need?
It would need to be 0.2. It would need to be double that.
Okay, so we would need like 1.2 times the number, the amount of money that we get for a regular student. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moses and then Ms. Feller.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, thank you for the presentation, and do a quick shout out to the Apple program. I've had some experience with them, and they do a tremendous job. So
thank you.
Give them make they get recognized. I'm glad to know we have the CPAC, and I think that's really important to get that parent input. Because two questions had that: how can parents, if they're interested, get involved in that and be a part of that committee? Then also, besides that, what are we doing to work with individual students' parents to make sure they're partners with us as we work with their children?
So the answer to your first question is we have a website, and our CPAC website has the dates of all the different types of events, meetings, the coffees, the luncheons, the council. Most of those things happen every month, and the dates are available on the website. We also sent out at the very beginning of the year a save the date flyer, went out through all of our campuses. So please, parents, you're welcome to join us. We are always happy to have new faces. How are we gathering input from other parents?
Or just how are you gathering input, working with them to make sure they know we are partners and helping their child?
Absolutely. And I think when it comes down to it, any 504 meeting or any ARD meeting, we always invite the parent. And I would say, I think there are some districts that struggle to have parent attendance at those meetings. I have not seen that be the case. I think we have parents who are very active and involved. And then the law says we need to schedule those meetings at a mutually agreeable time. We're always flexible. We want to make sure that we are honoring that. So if parents give us, I can only come on Tuesdays and Fridays, then we shoot for a Tuesday or Friday.
And then on slide 20, it talks about the number of evaluations and the number of students served through gen ed and then those through special education. Growing up, and I am dyslexic, so I remember growing up, I was always, as a student, apprehensive to seek out the services I was entitled to just because of any type of stigma that was attached to that.
Yes, sir.
What are we doing to work with our students to make sure, just like we are on the mental health side, and those people make students know if they need some assistance there, that they're getting, it's okay, that's what it's there for? What are we doing to help our students and parents know just because you have some type of need, that's okay, and that you don't need to feel like you should be seeking out the services you're entitled to?
Absolutely. We do have 3 dyslexia parent nights a year, and we welcome parents and students to come to those and learn more about the disability. We also try to make sure that it's because it's a delicate balance what you're talking about. When we push into classes, we want to serve kiddos, but we want to make sure that we are not highlighting kiddos or undermining their right to confidentiality.
I remember that always being a concern, that all of a sudden you're going to feel like you're getting a leg up, but in reality, no, you're trying to get actually the help you need to be on the same level.
Absolutely. And so we make sure that when there is a second service provider in a general education setting, that person makes a point to serve all kids, to make sure they're walking around, talking to kiddos who are eligible for services, but also supporting kids who are not, so that no one is readily identified as needing special help.
Yeah, Ms. Felder.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to start with slide 21 on the person first language and how much I appreciate that. And as a parent of a child in Talented and Gifted, a parent of a child in gen ed, and a parent of a child that receives special education services, if one is normal, 2 are not. So just my point is there is no normal. Every child has their strengths, their weaknesses, and I appreciate bringing highlight to the fact that these differences are what make us unique. My question really centers around can you explain what the process is for conflict resolution among the 504 process and the SPED process, just so that we understand if there's a difference in the process, I know I heard you say that a parent can request an evaluation at any time, how is that done, things like this, just so we can kind of understand the ins and outs of how that process works.
Absolutely. For both processes, our goal is to end each meeting in consensus. Of course, special education, those are much more individualized plans, so they're more involved. There's a lot more moving parts usually. But when we don't end in consensus, when a parent and a school team disagree on what's best for a student, the first thing is it's always good that we can come back to no one sitting around that table is there because they don't care about kids. So we always have that in common. From there, we try to really distill down to what is the disagreement. We try not to get hung up on a specific request and we can't do that specific request. We try to press for more information. What's behind the request? What are the concerns? What are you seeing at home? So we try to gather more information. Sometimes we take a break. Sometimes we recess the meeting and we take a 10-day break so that we can gather more information and communicate outside of those processes, because as well-intentioned as all of us are, a 504 meeting or an ARD meeting can be stressful. They can be sort of a contrived situation. So to take some time away from that and collaborate outside the process and then come back to the table, again, our goal is always to end an agreement. When we don't, parents have rights to take that disagreement to next levels. A parent can file for a mediation, which means TEA assigns us a mediator. It's paid for by TEA. And then we sit down for a day of discussions and we try to, through a mediator, come back to consensus. Or a parent can file for a due process hearing, which is an actual legal proceeding.
And so just along the same lines, I know that there was a customer service satisfaction survey that was conducted this past spring, and you and I have talked about it briefly. And where do we stand on hearing some results of that, and where the population is in general
Yes, ma'am. So I may have painted myself into a corner with that survey because I intentionally didn't make it a Likert survey. I didn't want to have a 4.3 on something and a 4.2 on something else and not feel like that was really telling me much. So it was much more anecdotal. It was open-ended questions. That said, we have finished compiling all of those open-ended things and looked for trends. You're going to have one or two people who have concerns that I consider sort of outliers and we would want to address, but we really looked for what were some recurring themes. And we have compiled that, and we plan to send that out in the CPAC newsletter in December.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'll say the same thing. Thank you for your presentation, the detail. I got to just make a quick comment here, but first I want to say my dad got his PhD in special ed from UT here, and one of his very first job after that was to there was institutionalized special ed. So a few decades ago, people would drop their children, once they were identified as special ed, they would institutionalize them. And his job, and they segregated. So and that, imagine where we are today compared to what it was back then.
We've come a long way.
So as much room as there is for improvement, I applaud the whole community and society for welcoming all these kids into our classrooms and in general ed and just seeing all that gets done with that. So anyway, as you know, we've got some comments here, and we've had a lot of inquiries. We've had a kind of a steady stream of dyslexia comments. So as I've always done and will continue to do, is I always give the administration, please look into that, address it. I talked to Ms. Estes the other day, and she assured us that you were going to be addressing a lot of these details. So I think you've seen all the emails that have come to us, and we're listening to the community, but we're also giving you all a chance to address it. And I hopefully this is answering some of the questions. And going forward, I know there's a lot of rules and changes that happen throughout the year. And I hope that some of that is kind of learning process or the new techniques. So again, I give you credit for reaching out, and I hope that the CPAC embraces dyslexia and everything. So, and if it needs to be a separate group, again, if you need to come back, I hope it doesn't take board action for that. But if it does, if you need to create a separate organization, I think you have consensus from us to do something like that. But anyway, again, I applaud you for your work and your effort, and certainly for the outreach and hopefully the continued outreach that you continue to do with that. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and start taking public comments, if that's all right. So I'm going to make an adjustment to the statement. Anybody who signed up for self will get 3 minutes. If you're for a group, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand as a group, and you get 5 minutes. But if you're part of a group, then you don't get to speak again for another 3 minutes. Does that make sense? So anyway, just as respect for time of everybody here. So we might need to clarify that in the wording or on the online. But with that, I'll start with Christina Green, and this is all related to dyslexia. Christina Green, and after that will be Heidi Goldman. This is 3 minutes. Is that right? Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Green. I'm here to represent my two children, one of which was born in kidney failure and is in general education but has special education needs. In addition to that, my other son was identified with having dysgraphia and dyslexia. Within the process of trying to get my oldest identified with dyslexia, because we know it runs in the family through my husband's side, since kindergarten, we've been very open with our communication with all of his teachers, kinder, first, second, third, fourth. That's where he's at now. It's been a very trying few years. Unfortunately, the communication between us and the teacher was good, but we would always say, we're concerned. He's very behind in reading. He can't write properly. He doesn't understand his handwriting. What can we do at home to help improve what he's not doing in the classroom? They all cooperated really well, but we always asked, do you think he's dyslexic? Oh, I'm not too sure. And I don't know how to say this, but our son, because of all the we're not sures, I don't think so, I think yes, we spent a lot of money taking him to get tested privately, which we didn't have because we had a son on dialysis, and it was very complicated. So our son was diagnosed with dysgraphia. We were told that was not part of the 504 and that there was no modifications or accommodations for our child, somebody who couldn't read his own handwriting. That was the first problem. The second problem is we still felt like he was dyslexic. So we finally realized we need to ask. We're educated people, and we didn't know that we needed to ask. So we asked for that test to be given to our son, and it took almost 5 months for him to get diagnosed with dyslexia. In that year, third grade, while he was taking the STAR testing and preparing, it was a very, very difficult year for my son and my family. Not only did my other son get a kidney transplant, we were dealing with that, and then we were dealing with our son who was depressed. He didn't want to go to school. He had headaches, stomach aches. He had no self-confidence. And it took a lot of work on our end to get him to a good place. Luckily, he passed his STAR test, and now he's in 4th grade, and he's thriving. And it's been a good experience from this point forward, but I don't understand why it had to be so complicated for our son to get put in the committee meeting or talked about in the committee meetings on Mondays or whenever y'all have them to get him tested. And there's parents out there that don't know the steps, the proper steps. And that's the difficult part, is how scary it is that how many other children are out there that are not getting tested and getting what they need. So I'm just asking for a better process.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
And we may come back to this and let Ms. Gonzalez answer questions for that, but not right now. We'll go ahead with the speakers here. So next up is Heidi Goldman. After that will be Adrienne Allsbrooks.
Hi, y'all. I'm back again. And I brought 2 rows of parents with me this time. So
You with a group there?
No, I'm not speaking
Okay.
as a group.
All right.
We're all speaking for 3 minutes. We're not trying to hold it up. I'm going to just talk about the screening. Again, a screening does not give your child a diagnosis of a disability. All it is screening for dyslexia. It's state mandated by the Texas Handbook. Texas Education Code requires each district to report the results of this reading instrument to the district's Board of Trustees, the TEA, and the parent or guardian of each student. So it's required. If you think this kid is at risk for dyslexia based on the screening, you actually have to tell the parent. You know, you're not labeling them with a disability off of a screener. It's not a lifelong consequence. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry. So that is not happening in our district. Has there been any accountability or data tracked by this district of how many kids are determined to be at risk for dyslexia, or the number of students then further recommended for evaluation? That would solve everybody's problem here. Instead of waiting for these kids to fail in 3rd grade or 4th grade on the STAR, because I'm sorry, it's just so hard. The overriding problem with this, the overarching problem with the culture of this district, is we're not being proactive. We're not using screeners to identify dyslexic students early and provide the appropriate intervention based on their learning disability. Instead, the screener is not leading to further evaluations. Interventions are being provided based on this limited information provided by the screener. And then the district holding the standard of educational need as the only way your child can get help requires the child to have to fail. And some schools really, still by the old standard, they have to get 2 years behind before they will recognize that now there's an educational need that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to read out of the handbook as well, page 7, Dyslexia Handbook. If the persistent achievement gap between dyslexic and typical readers is to be narrowed or even closed, reading interventions must be implemented early when children are still developing the basic foundation for reading acquisition. The persistent achievement gap poses serious consequences for dyslexic readers, which we're going to hear from multiple parents tonight. Implementing effective reading programs early, even in preschool and kindergarten, offers the potential to reduce and perhaps even close the achievement gap between dyslexic and typical readers and bring their trajectory closer over time. This will never be achieved by allowing children to fail grade levels behind before you allow help to arrive.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman. Next up will be Adrienne Allsbrooks. Is that right? And then after that will be Amber Wong.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. I'm a certified academic language therapist, as well as a licensed dyslexia therapist in the state of Texas, and a former Round Rock ISD interventionist. I work with several students in your district privately to help them with the services they need. As a Round Rock ISD interventionist, I received training in both Wilson Reading System and Basic Language Skills, both programs highly effective for working with students with dyslexia. In going through training, one of the major points impressed upon us as CALTs in training was the importance of delivering these programs with fidelity. In delivering services with fidelity, it means delivering the services for the recommended amount of time, adhering to the program, and assuring that a trained, certified person is delivering the instruction. As an interventionist, however, I was forced to compromise the fidelity of the program because of other needs in the school and in the district. 16 professional development days, 3 weeks of universal screening, 504 meetings during the school day, and various last-minute situations, I was unable to deliver the dyslexia services with fidelity. I began tracking data on days, times, and reasons for not being able to see students when they were at school. When factoring out holidays and early release days, my students were receiving my services 52% of the time that they were at school. I was appalled. I was determined to make a change, not for me, but for these students who deserved the very best in services. Also, during my time as an interventionist, I began to see that services were being provided differently at different elementary schools. At my school, I was able to pull the students necessary for 45 to 60 minutes in one session, but other schools' interventionists were only allowed to pull their students for 30 minutes at a time, or for 2 or 3 days per week. It became very clear that dyslexia services were not being provided with fidelity and were different depending on the school attended. At the very last interventionist meeting of that school, I took all my data to the head of RTI for the district. She looked at each reason and very promptly replied, "I can't do anything about that," to each one. I speak to you tonight to beg you to continue to focus on improving dyslexia services in Round Rock ISD by ensuring they are provided with fidelity and equity to all students with dyslexia, ensuring that all dyslexia interventionists are properly trained, minimizing the amount of time interventionists are pulled from teaching, and tracking the students receiving services to make sure they are making the necessary progress are the first steps to fidelity in dyslexia services. Let's make this a destination district for all students with dyslexia across Texas. There are roughly 50,000 students in 55 campuses over a 110-mile radius. Based on the statistic that 1 in 5 students have characteristics of dyslexia, that means roughly 10,000 students in our district have these characteristics that need to be addressed. 10,000 students. We cannot afford to continue to fail these students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alsbrooks. Next up will be Amber Wong, and then after that will be Lisa Schultz.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm the mother of the first-year grader. My daughter got the screening result in the end of the kindergarten. To my surprise, she is fell in many areas, have the risk. I have no idea for those screening results. What does the nonsense sound screening risk mean? Which means I don't even understand the result telling me. I have to go back to the school, asking the teacher, asking the principal, finally get myself talking to the the dyslexia interventionist, understand what does those mean. And then later, I was able to offer what are the options I have. At the time, I don't even understand there is a full individuation plan yet. So my point is, after looking at the report you guys are doing, first of all, thank you so much. This is such an important topic. Second of all, to my surprise, with such a small amount of the staff, such an important topic, such a small amount of the budget, how can we really help the Round Rock ISD students? If by our team members mentioned, if there is a potential 10,000 students is going to have this problem, how will the parents be educated, understand what the resource they have? I have no idea what are the resources I can have until I spend a couple hours schedule many meetings with the parents. So in short, my recommendation for this group of people is making this program complete, making sure the service should start from the day one when the parents receive their kids is at risk. Don't let the parents wandering around how to receive those reports. And a lot of parents, they don't even know if that's a really risk or not. When I first received the report, I asked 3 people. I got 5 different answers. So they've got to have the standard understanding, simplify the process, help the parents to know what are the resources we can have. And we are willing to help. I mean, we are the parents. We don't want other parents follow our suit, taking that journey like what we are struggling right now. This is just the beginning of myself and my daughters going to this path. And I hope what we are doing here can help the other parents make it much easier for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Up next will be Lisa Schultz, I think, and then after that will be Callie Forrester.
Hello. I'm representing my son, who's a sixth grader, and he's dyslexic. I have a similar story. My son, I knew there was something going on with him from kindergarten. I spoke to his teachers every year, asked if they thought he was dyslexic, if he had a learning disability. All of them, oh, he's just got test anxiety. Oh, he's got this. Oh, it was always something. But they never told me that I needed to ask to be tested for him to be evaluated. Nobody told me what I needed to do or how I needed to get help. So until last year when he was in fifth grade, and I'm like, he's going to middle school. He's not going to have elementary to kind of be there for him. And so what do I do? And finally the teacher said, go ask for him to be evaluated. He might have a processing disorder. And she told me to go myself because if she requested it, it would probably take much longer than if I requested it. I don't understand why if a teacher requests it, it takes longer. When I finally did have him evaluated and he was identified with dyslexia, I was told that prior to having the ARD meeting that he was not special ed, that he qualified for 504. So it didn't follow the process that we heard tonight. We didn't come to a meeting. I wasn't educated about what the difference between SPED and 504 was. I wasn't told what that entailed. I was just told prior he wasn't SPED. So over the summer, I've educated myself, luckily met several other parents, and I requested a 504 meeting before he went to school this year. I talked to them about the Wilson Reading Program, which was told to me would be to help dyslexia. They suggested that I enroll him in the Read 180 program. Listening to them, because they're the specialists, I went ahead and put him in the Read 180 program, later to find out that doesn't necessarily help dyslexia. I feel like as a parent, where I wasn't educated by the school. I had to go find outside resources. I had to go figure this out. I had to find, where is the education for us? Where is the process? And are the teachers educated? Do they know what to look for? I'm excited to hear that we are making progress with Round Rock ISD. I am excited to hear that we are screening and trying to catch this at an earlier age because elementary school was really hard. My son his self-esteem was low. He hated school. He would be nauseous every morning, and we didn't know why. We didn't know what it was. And when we found out that when he had dyslexia, it was like shining a light in this darkness.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Up next will be Callie Forrester and then Janet Wilson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Callie Forrester. I'm in the 9th grade, and I go to school right here at the beloved home of the Dragons. Something you might not be able to tell by just looking at me, I'm dyslexic. Correction, I'm dyslexic and proud. I was diagnosed with dyslexia at the end of 3rd grade. I started receiving help by the program Wilson. I only took it for the middle of 4th grade until 5th, and I stopped before middle school. I think it was because I passed my START test and I made good grades, but I still struggled. In a time not long ago, I didn't feel proud when I walked down these halls. I felt shame. Shame for not fitting in the box that everyone else did so effortlessly. Feeling I'm not worthy of help because I'm different. Unfortunately, a lot of kids with dyslexia walk around with this shame every day. And how can you tell us we're wrong for feeling it? We are told to ask for help when needed, but when we do, they make us feel dumb for thinking of the question in the first place. So we quickly save ourselves from that embarrassment by rebutting with, oh, never mind. They tell us we have accommodations, but every time we need them, they suddenly feel out of reach. I continuously ask myself, if we were your kids, would you help us more? Would you see the energy being drained from us trying to decode one word, which takes the average person 10 times less energy to do? We are strong and intelligent. We should not have to fight for what we deserve. We see the world differently in a beautiful way. I watched a video where a teacher explained dyslexia to her students, and she said, the average thinker gets from A to B very quickly. It's like they're on a highway. The dyslexic brain is more like taking the scenic route. Might take longer to get from A to B, but think of all the things you see. If more educators spoke and described dyslexia in this way, I think it would change kids' confidence tremendously. I know not everything has a simple fix, but to me, it's time for educators to be the ones that are getting educated. I am dyslexic and I'm very proud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Forster. Next up will be Janet Wilson. After that will be Linda Malton, I think. Malton, anyway. Okay.
That's a hard one to follow. Good evening. My name's Janet Wilson, and I have 2 sons with dyslexia. While in 7th grade, our youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia through private evaluation after his counselor said we wouldn't want to label him and ignored our request for testing. We were told that he would have to wait an additional 8 months to start a program called Just Words. Unsatisfied with that answer, we paid for a consultation with a dyslexia expert. We then learned from the instruction manual for Just Words, it detailed that our son's testing scores were too low to qualify for the program, and that a stronger intervention was required. We took this information to the person who is now the Director of Dyslexia Services. We asked for our son to be provided with an intervention that met his needs. We were told that those programs were not available at his campus, and the district would not bring someone to his campus to provide intervention. The director later recommended a program called Read 180. We've already heard about that tonight. I was told, and I have this in writing, that it meets TEA guidelines for dyslexia intervention. With a call to TEA, I learned that it did not meet such guidelines. We also provided the district with research from the U.S. Department of Education, which concluded that Read 180 did not provide any benefit for dyslexia. Yet this is what the Round Rock ISD dyslexia leadership was recommending for our dyslexic son. Even the district dyslexia website is misleading and lacks information. It details dyslexia testing and services through 504. But fails to mention options for a full independent individual evaluation or that students with dyslexia may also qualify for special education. It fails to provide any information on dyslexia screening or interventions that are available. Let's talk about educational need. My son in 7th grade was below the 5th grade level in all reading areas except for comprehension because he's fortunate to be very bright. Yet, he did not meet educational need for dyslexia. Round Rock ISD requires significant improvement in regards to dyslexia identification, intervention, and information. While some dyslexia students are provided services through special education, most are still provided services through 504. Therefore, dyslexia is not represented through the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Not that it's not a great organization, but it does not encompass most of our children. We saw that in how the group is separated in the presentation tonight. AISD recognizes this uniqueness and has provided dyslexia with its own advisory council. We have worked hard to advocate for our sons with dyslexia over the last 2 years. It has taken countless hours of research to navigate all the misinformation and barriers that the district has thrown at us. Not all families have the awareness or resources to fight for their struggling children. It is the district's responsibility to identify these students, to follow regulations, and to provide accurate information. We ask that the school board create a committee which will hold the district accountable to advocate for all students with dyslexia.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Next up will be Linda Martin. I'm not sure. M. Malton, not here. Okay. Maybe. Next up will be Mary Carol Kaufman. And then after that, our last speaker will be back to Jenny Fuller.
Good evening. My name is Mary Carol Kaufman. I help support the Round Rock Dyslexia Group. I am a former parent in the district, now a community member My dyslexic one is an adult, and we actually ended up having to take her out of Round Rock ISD because her needs were not being met, and we were financially able to do so. Our parents have made some really great points tonight. Because we have this opportunity to talk to the board, I want to take a chance to just re-emphasize a couple of other things. Parents have very, very different rights under Section 504 than under special education, and they really have very weak rights under 504. Yet currently, I believe it was Ryan Smith presented to our group this past summer that 98% of the dyslexic students in the district currently are being served under special ed. These new numbers may indicate a little bit of a difference, but the vast majority are under 504. Also, I believe CPAC councils are mandated under federal law, under IDEA law. 10% is a conservative number for dyslexia of the general population. 20%, what you heard earlier today, is the higher end. But either way, we're talking 5,000 to 10,000 students in the district who have this disability. Disability is a natural part of life, as this beautiful photograph shows us. It walks with us, with everyone, and we just need to keep that in mind. I think the last point that I want to make is the Wilson Reading System, which is the dyslexia curriculum that the district has adopted, has 12 units in it, to my understanding. To teach the first 6 units, you have to be certified by the publisher. You're a level 1 certified instructor. To teach the second 6 units, units 7 through 12, I believe you have to be a level 2 Wilson instructor. I believe at this time there are only 2 employees in the district who are certified at that level. And dyslexia requires to be properly remediated. You have to have all 12 units. It just doesn't provide enough education for them. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kaufman. And our final speaker will be Jenny Fuller.
Hi, my name is Jenny Fuller. I have 2 children that are smart but struggling. They're currently in the full individual evaluation phase. That began just prior to school starting, that it was requested. And I signed the paperwork, and our reports will be due on Monday, October 21st. So it has taken this long for my students, my children, to be evaluated. In that time, they've been removed from the classroom to get their testing done. It impacts their education just being tested, unfortunately. They're already behind the 8 ball. They're taken out, which is necessary, but then they're put right back in and expected just to keep up with everybody else. And that's been very tough for them. My kids come home and they fall apart. My experience thus far, me personally, with the staff and the administrators, is that many of them have been unresponsive, uncooperative, disrespectful, deceitful, whether they intended to be that way or not, and deficient in recognizing and addressing my children's needs, whether that's educationally and otherwise, safety, for instance. While there have been some well-meaning individuals, unfortunately, I believe that they may be unequipped to help us in the ways that our children need. As far as that kindergarten screener and first grade screener is concerned, I am very interested to know how many people last year, how many students took those screeners, how many were identified to be at risk, and exactly what specifications are required to constitute at risk. My son took that screener last year, and on the very first one, phonological awareness, he was marked 20th percentile, at risk. That is the single one most responsible instance, they believe, for dyslexia. So he was also marked other things at risk. 3 out of 5 on the front page. 1 was not marked. It was not completed. I believe that Round Rock ISD is using this just to check off the box that they are complying with the law, and that is not enough for our dyslexic students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller. All right, that's our last speaker. With that, if we have any comments, I have a couple quick questions, and I saw you, Ms. Festus, writing down. So back on page 20, I think of the org chart or the flow chart, the very first thing, and I'm going to go through a couple things here, but it was said that one of the first things is a qualified group of people does a certification, or the parent can make the recommendation. So I know that was mentioned by a couple people. It's Mr. Smith, if you can do a control plus a few times and just read that first. Just zoom in on that very first top one up there. It says a team of knowledgeable persons reviews data and existing blah 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 dyslexia related in the evaluation anytime, and then right below that says parent can request evaluation anytime. So I was going to ask if that's, and I'll go through a couple points. So if you can just direct all of these, answer them. There was a couple comments about when the testing was done. Some people said they had to get behind before they were tested. Understanding the results, that was a question. The 10% of the students, and then they asked for help. I heard that several times. So, and then dysgraphia was another one. So I don't know if that qualifies, but then the Read 180. So that's a lot of questions, comments. I don't know if you can answer all of those now. I don't know if any of the trustees had that, but I did see you taking notes. If there was anything in that, Ms. Gonzalez, I don't know if you wanted to address any of those directly, but those are things that I heard and just wrote down real quick. So.
Where would you like for us to start?
Well, first of all, this very first bullet here says a team of knowledgeable persons reviews the data. So my first thought is teachers are looking at students. They're seeing that they might need help, and they're hopefully addressing it right away.
Yes, and the team would include campus-based staff as well as typically in this district we include the parent in that conversation as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I actually follow up on that? So we're doing this universal screener on every kinder and first grader. So when they get this report back, are we giving them, like, if your child is at risk, here are your steps? I mean, is there a way, because when we get some of our test scores for other things, it says, these are the books that your kids should read. These are whatever when you get your STAR test results. So I'm just wondering if there's any way to include in that for these parents, here are your steps to go through.
So the screener is not intended to identify dyslexia. It's intended to help us keep kids from falling through the cracks. It's intended to bring a child who may be struggling in reading for any number of reasons, including dyslexia, to the attention of the educational team who's serving that student. And then from there, if there are concerns that the supports that are being provided, we absolutely can do a dyslexia evaluation. The screening results, the sheet that went home with all kids, if a student has been identified as at risk, it also said parents have the right to request a special education evaluation at any time. That was on every letter that went home. And yes, the screening was for every kindergartner and every first grader.
Because it kind of just sounded like people didn't know. I mean, and I've heard that before. I've heard that at my school. Like, I thought it would happen automatically, and it didn't happen automatically, and it was only later that I found out I should have done something. I guess just from a customer service standpoint, maybe.
I think we can always do better. Yes, ma'am.
So can you clarify your last statement when you said that the screener is not used to identify dyslexia? Is that what you said?
I think that the intention of the screener is to identify potential of risk of reading difficulty. And then the team might come together and look deeper into student performance, other assessments.
So is there a preset, if, and I'll be honest, they started this after my kids were through kinder and first, so I never received one of these, but so I don't know exactly what the report looks like, but is there a procedure or a policy that says if they are identified at risk on 3 out of 5 categories, or if their scores are below X number, then they're at higher risk? Or are they put on any kind of structured follow-up plan? Or, I mean, like, what exactly are, like, if we're doing all of this, what exactly are we doing with the information that we gather from it?
I would say typically a student would then be brought, if they're identified as at risk with the screeners, then the campus student support team would probably be the first line of group of knowledgeable people that would discuss that student and how they're performing. Talking through, is there some kind of anomaly during the day of the screener for that student? Is this a pattern they're seeing in their performance in other areas as well? But it becomes an individual decision at that point. There's no kind of set standard that if this, then that. It's individualized for each student.
And so is that discussed with the family that, are you seeing these things at home, or are we just basing it on classroom experiences? I'm just trying to get a little better understanding of what exactly we do with these.
I wouldn't say it's 100% consistent on each one. I'd say typically the parents are communicated with when their students are talked about at SST meetings. I can't say for certain that it's 100% of the time, but I'd say that'd be the most of the time.
Okay, thanks.
Everything? So otherwise,
Sorry, I pressed on buttons.
no, that's it. But go ahead.
You're good. No, I just want to say, so we've heard a lot of comments tonight. It sounds like also that you've recently done a survey to get some additional information, some anecdotals. Then I hope that there might be some those same things shared in that to reflect on and work on as well. Because like anything else, there's always room for improvement. Nothing in this district is absolutely perfect. If it was perfect, it'd be, utopia, and utopia doesn't exist. So we need to just make sure that we are continue to be responsive. I'm glad to see we've added more members to the team. I hope Dr. Flores, Dr. Audix, as we move forward later this year, the budget conversations, that there's opportunities through either state or federal funds or additional resources that become available in the budget through either whatever mechanisms we figure out, that this may be an area to look at potentially adding some additional resources to make sure that 100% of the students that need and qualify for services are receiving those services.
I want to say kind of a couple years ago, maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago, the special ed, the state kind of had a standard cap on it by 10% or something like that. Was it 8 and 5, whatever? So there was a number, and then different campuses, different districts had different amounts, and they changed that. But we heard a couple people tonight say, is it 10%? Anyway, I think that goes back to what you're saying: is are we addressing all the students? Are you all addressing all the students? And as long as you're identifying them, they're not falling behind before you intervene. That's my.
Yeah, we completely agree. And it's always our goal to identify 100% of the students that have needs, absolutely. And I do want to say that there's been a tremendous amount of work that's occurred in the world of dyslexia over the last 2-3 years. We are seeing almost twice the number of students now eligible as just 4 to 5 years ago. Not that, again, there's always room, as Trustee Moses said, for us to improve in any program in the district, and we don't ever feel like we're all done. That is our work, but we definitely appreciate the advocacy of the parents, and it's very helpful to hear comments because it points us in the direction of, okay, maybe there's a little something we could improve about the screening letter that's sent out to the parents.
Great. Okay. Dr. Flores, you want to jump in there real quick?
Yeah, I just want to say that first and foremost, we hear parents and we hear the concerns, and there's no doubt that those concerns are not only heartfelt, they're yours, and so we want to make sure and I want to make sure that I acknowledge that. But I also want to acknowledge one of the best staffs in special education services in the state of Texas, and that's right here in Round Rock ISD. And I know that I hear some of the concerns, but one of the other things that you don't get to hear are the positive results of those things that I get to hear and I get to see when I go to campuses. So are we perfect? No, we're not. But I can tell you, I'd put this special education team with anybody in the state of Texas. Will we get better? We will get better. But no doubt about it, I just want to make sure, I don't want us to generalize on a few that we hear to maximize what we think the entire district's about, because that's not what we're about. So I hear what parents are saying, but I also want to defend our staff. And I think at some point in time, we all have to do that. Thank you.
Ms. Vesson and Ms. Weir.
I just want to echo some of the other comments. And first of all, just thank all the parents for coming tonight and sharing their experiences. As a trustee, I don't none of my children have gone through this process. So hearing about your experiences is really, really helpful. I was taking notes throughout the time about your comments and things that we could do better, and just know that, I mean, me personally, we'll follow up and we'll really try to make sure that, these concerns are being addressed. It was very helpful. I'm so glad that we had this night to talk about it and spent this time talking about it, because I really think that one, we've come a long way and we still have a long way to go, but it's, this is all a process, and this is part of that process. So I'm so excited for how much advocacy is going on, because I'm always talking about how important advocacy is, and it is so important. So thank you for advocating. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for speaking out. Thank you for all the people who's been sending emails. It is so, so helpful as we try to improve our services for you to give feedback. And so that was pretty much just what I wanted to say. Just thank you for all the feedback. And I do want to say that, I do think there are a lot of success stories too. I don't think, we hear about the problems and that can kind of paint a negative picture. But, that's why we're here. I mean, we're here to address problems. But there are a lot of success stories and a lot of great things going on, and so I do applaud the work of our staff and their efforts. And we also know that we have room to improve, as Mandy was saying. So we're listening, and just thank you for your feedback.
Okay, Ms. Weir, then Mr. Moses.
I actually just wanted to follow up on what Trustee Moses was saying, and hopefully when we get to the budget talks, we heard a lot about fidelity and being able to do the whole program, and that sounds like that's something you need from us to help you with. So I hope that we can focus on that. And then I'm also curious, if we're not doing the same things, the fidelity at each campus and with each student, is that maybe a policy thing that you need us to look at to make sure that, or is that come from y'all? I don't know.
Well, I can speak broad overview of some changes we've made internally this year. So I feel like we will have a much better idea from a monitoring standpoint, of the fidelity of program, decoupling interventionists to now have dyslexia service providers and RTI interventionists is going to go a long way in that. So I think we cleaned up a lot of our systems over the last year. So I feel that as we go through this year, we're going to have a much better idea about some of those things.
Okay, Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to maybe clarify a little bit, because I do think the additional funding is designed because we do have confidence in the team. We wouldn't say, let's talk about putting more money into a program. We didn't think we had the right people in place to go use it wisely and make recommendations to help our students. And also, as our parents and our staff work together, it is important to know that we know that's a team, and that the staff is always the best people to go to as a parent first to address concerns, address anything you'd like to see with your child. So I want to encourage our staff to be responsive and helpful to our parents, and also encourage our parents to always know that the staff is going to be the best place to go and address the individual needs of your students.
Okay. Anything else? No, I appreciate it. Thank you for your input, and thank you for the parents as well for speaking up. All right, we have a couple more for the superintendent's report. Can we do those and then take a break, or do you need to take a break now? The goal progress measures and then the monthly financials. What's that? Now? Okay, let's take a quick break. All right. So it's 9:02. We'll take a quick break. Welcome back. Go ahead and get restarted here. We'll go to back to agenda item G2, Superintendent's Report, Goal Progress Measures 4.2, Algebra 1 Enrollment, 5.1, Advanced Course Enrollment. Dr. Presley and Mandy Estes and Dr. Malerba.
Yes, before they get started, we also have Dr. Drew Howard with the Lone Star Governance Coach from Texas Education Agency to also assist. So without further ado, Mandy Estes.
Good evening, trustees. Again, this presentation will update you on goal progress measures 4.2 and 5.1. As we go into this Lone Star governance model, this is our second month bringing you an academic report around goal progress measures. And I'm sure that we will all recognize and learn the numbers of all of these by name and by heart as we go into this. I do want to thank Drew Howard for his work with all of us. He is obviously the board's coach, but we certainly have benefited from his work internally as well. These goals are GPMs that basically support student outcomes based on completion of courses, either Algebra 1 in middle school or credit-bearing courses or potentially credit-bearing courses in high school. As a reminder, for this first one, for Goal Progress Measure 4.2, we'll go forward. Our overall goal that we're targeting here is to increase the percentage of students who score approaches on the Algebra 1 EOC on their first attempt, and that is our goal is from 88 to 94% by June of 2024. One of the goal progress measures under that overall goal is this notion of increasing the percentages of students who successfully complete Algebra 1 in middle school, and you'll see from 45% to 60%. Across the nation, and this is important to know, the U.S. Department of Ed has run numbers that indicate 24% of students across the nation complete Algebra 1 in middle school. So again, always work to be done, but I do want to recognize our staff here in Round Rock that we are starting at a baseline of 45%. So I think that is something noteworthy and exciting for all of us to celebrate.
And I'll add to that, it's been a controversial subject for more than 20 years of whether you should force all kids to take algebra before high school or not. And really the research is kind of all over the place with that. California, I know, had a law at one point that all kids had to take Algebra 1 before they entered high school, and they retracted that law in 2013. So different states, different agencies, different researchers say different things about having every kid take it because the psychological readiness for a kid to take Algebra 1 is not the same for every kid. We need to look at everything we do through a lens of equity, but so I think I'm sure you guys know that, but I want to make sure you know that's a controversial subject of whether ramping up the number of kids that take Algebra 1 is a good thing for everybody or it's not, because there are districts and places that require it, and a lot of the ones who did require it have now retracted that. So I just want to make those comments.
Yes, and those are great comments to segue to the middle school pathways that we do have available for our students in the district. And so you'll see in a future slide that a lot of the work around this particular GPM lies in the 5th to 6th grade transition, which sounds a little counterintuitive when we're looking at completing algebra in middle school. But as kids enter middle school, that's the critical point for us to really start to look at could we accelerate them if they're not already on an accelerated path. So we have these course pathways across all of our middle schools. One is 6th grade math, which leads to 7th grade math, to 8th grade math, which is what many, many students in the state do, and it is on level, and it is perfectly fine to be an on-level student getting a great foundation in math. We also have 6th grade Excel, which is an accelerated course that covers all of the 6th grade standards in math and half of the 7th grade standards. Those students would then move into 7th grade Excel and cover the other half of 7th grade and all of 8th grade standards. So it's an accelerated, compacted curriculum, leading then to take algebra in 8th grade. And then lastly, we have the path that our TAG students take, and that is 6th grade TAG, algebra, geometry. And keep in mind that none of these are especially fixed. We always have some incidences of kids jumping from one track to the other, and there's some options to enable students to do that. And I will tell you that the TAG compacting that I just described earlier actually starts in 3rd grade. So as 3rd grade students, we start to compact the curriculum. And by the time that they hit algebra in 7th grade, we've essentially taken 6 years' worth of math standards and learning, compacted them into 4 years of curriculum. And so those are the pathways that we can take. Important to note, because I know we got the question today from one of the trustees about some of the data around, well, how do 7th graders get to take algebra at that level? And it is based on tag identification, which we think for this particular GPM, we're going to have some benefits in later years. Michelle and her group, working with David Osmond, and Kathy's group in 17-18 did a research project on our identification of students for tag services in elementary. And that typically occurs at second grade. And we found some changes that we could make to the identification process. Those were piloted at 10 schools and then last year at all schools. And basically it involved adjusting our norms and doing some other things as well. But I did want you to know that even though that's an elementary initiative, that should pay benefit as we expand that pathway to 7th grade algebra for this GPM as well. Moving on to the next slide. So some of the things that we've done around this Algebra 1 in middle school initiative, and keep in mind these are spring activities. So kids sign up for courses in the spring of each year. And so during that time, after we come back from the holidays, a lot of communication starts to happen with our parents. There are parent orientations and brown bag lunch presentations that are hosted between feeder elementaries and our middle school will be accepting those 5th grade students. Middle school choice sheets are actually open for parents to request those advanced math courses. And this past year, we began a process of students in 5th grade who demonstrate master's level performance on STAR are automatically opted into advanced math in 6th grade. And that doesn't mean that parents can't opt them back out. They may have some thinking that it's maybe not the right time for their student, but we start with opting into that 6th grade accelerated curriculum. There's student orientations with the high school and middle school counselors that then explain those math outcomes and how that pathway goes into their graduation plans and later their diplomas. And there's a lot of vertical planning that has happened in the last year and a half, especially between our 5th and 6th grade teachers. Our instructional coaches and our area directors of academics have done a lot of learning walks across campuses so that our 5th grade teachers can see what is happening in our 6th grade classrooms and the reverse as well. So we've really had a coordinated effort to try to connect that 5th to 6th grade transition to getting kids on an accelerated pathway that will lead to that middle school Algebra 1 credit. And we're continuing to look at what others are doing. And as Dr. Presley said, I don't think in our district we would want to adopt an every student is expected to take Algebra 1 in middle school, because Algebra 1 is a very foundational and important course for later courses in high school. We'd never want to force a kid to move too quickly through that continuum at the detriment of their academics in high school. But we certainly want to continue to move the needle where there is the opportunity to do so. Next slide. As of our evaluation now, what we did was we looked at enrollment of our 8th graders. And so for this fall of 2019, we have 36% of our 8th graders who are enrolled in Algebra 1. And when you combine that with the students in 8th grade who already receive credit for Algebra 1 as 7th graders, which was 11%, then we appear to be on track to meet or exceed the goal of 46% of the students earning credit in middle school for this year. And any questions on the algebra GPM?
Do you want us to ask the questions about the different, because we were presented here in our packets with it broken out by all our middle schools, and I had requested that some version of this that's sensitive to FERPA would be released, because I feel like it's important that we give out the data regarding this goal progress measure, because right now, I mean, other than saying we're on target to reach our 46%, we're not really giving any data in terms of by middle school or by student group. So is that okay? I mean, we actually had a conversation about this earlier today.
Well, and I think we provided all of that information to the trustees in the packets as you referenced, and so I think in that conversation it was that maybe that was a discussion for the board to have, along with Dr. Howard, who's here to speak to that. And so I would defer that conversation to the board and Dr. Howard.
So what I want is some version of this document that we were handed to be released publicly in terms of our performance on this goal progress measure. I mean, obviously, we're probably looking at percentages here because really some of these student groups are very, very small and that we could, have FERPA issues.
Yeah, I think you have to be very sensitive to the FERPA issues for sure. But I think moving forward, that could be an addition into these reports for looking at data district-wide. Here's the data. As you get into the more these progress measures are reported and the more assessments are given throughout the year and throughout this process, you're going to have data at specific data points that you can report on, and here's where we were at this date, here's where we are now, and here's where we were. You can go back and you can see a year ago, but starting out, you don't have a whole lot of data points, in this report. But going forward, you can add.
Were you given this?
No,
handout?
I wasn't. Didn't see that.
Okay.
But
so
you can
maybe
have,
if you could look at it and then you can tell your opinion on, because I feel like this is really, we have 2 years of data here. You could compare, one year to the next, and then you could kind of see where different groups, where we're starting, where different campuses are starting. I think it's valuable information.
No, I agree with that. I think you can easily put overall district data, especially if this has been tracked in the past.
I'm not interested in yes, I want overall district data, but when we started this process, we were very, very emphatic that we wanted it by student group and campus as well.
Well, if you're going to look at this goal, these goals and progress measures are district-wide. So you need to present, here's where the district was, here's where we're going, are we on track to reach our district goals? That data can be disaggregated and broken down by the different subgroups of students within the data. Are there a specific subgroup of students not reaching that goal or lower than others, and where do we need to target? To look at each specific campus, I wouldn't break that down by each individual student group per campus. You're going to have a 50-page document. But looking at an overall campus, are these campuses on track? Is this a campus that could be struggling? What's the plan for that campus? Those details can be added into the reports moving forward. So you look at the district overall. Are we where we need to be for our district overall goal? And then are there spots where we can improve? Highlight the positive areas, and then what's the plan to move forward, in the areas or the specific student group that is struggling. So those details, can be added in as this data is disaggregated and looked at. What's the plan for the administration to address where the issues may be if we're not on track to reach those goals. And even if you are on track, the reason why you break it down by student group for the district as a whole is there a specific student group that may be masked by the overall progress of a student group that has more students in it? So you don't want to leave, any group behind. So you look at that at a district level, and then you also can break it down by campus.
Because, that's exactly what these numbers are kind of doing, right? Our Asian, when you look at Algebra 1, the Asian percentage is 76%, and then you look at some of the other student groups. So you have to be in TAG to be in 7th grade algebra, and I'm hoping what you said with our TAG identification is going to change, because our African American, that means the entire district.
Yes, that's actually, and I'm happy to send a report to the board, or we could provide a report. That's actually why we entered into that project, was trying to look at the equity of our identification in elementary of our TAG kids.
That's clearly right there, that number. But then
Agreed.
even like the percentage, and our Hispanic percentage at 29% versus 76%. I don't know. I mean, that was one of my concerns with our goals to do it district-wide, that we were going to get this number of 45% or 46% that is going to mask these that are in the 20s, because we do have some that are, in this almost 80, 76%. And so I guess I don't know exactly. I mean, Corey's more of a data person, so I'll go with what she's asking, but I guess I don't understand how this is showing us. It is our first one, right? But we probably have this number from last year.
It's right here.
Right. Well, yeah, or even the year before, right? I mean, I guess I'm trying to visualize what it's going to look like going forward. So whenever this comes up again, we're going to see what? What is it going to look like so that we can see we're making progress?
Well, I guess I think I know what Drew's referring to, but if you remember from the Lone Star governance training, they really encouraged you to choose metrics that you could graph over time. So I think we'll start to see those graphs and see growth visually. I will say on this one, we're still learning too, because this is a very different way that we presented data than in the past. So I think I'll just say I was creative in the way that I established that baseline, and looking back on the way I requested the data, I don't know if it was ideal to add 7th and 8th graders the way that I did. So I think going forward, so starting with the class of, this is pretty accurate as to what I would be doing going forward. So that'll be, year one and baseline. But going forward, when we report the final data for the year, we'll look at the 8th grade class, and anybody in the 8th grade class that earned credit for algebra is going to be our success rate, right?
Actually, I kind of like it. I mean, I like seeing the 7th pulled out and total. So
it's concurrent, though, so it's not exactly
right.
It's an estimate, very much of an estimate.
I actually got this one, so I was
okay. I just wanted to be clear on that.
No, I totally. Like. But I thought that was just a really, because you pulled it out that way. I mean, it did show how many kids are in tag math for all of middle school in each group, because you can look at those 7th grade numbers, and some of those statistics are shocking. So I'm glad to know we're already on that. But
Mr. Moses, you want to jump in now real quick?
Yeah, and I think it's good to just share the data, but I want to be very conscientious of FERPA. So please, just whatever qualifies for that, just do that. And then, but I like the way it is broken out here by these subgroups, and because I think what it's going to do is not just the board, but then staff seeing these numbers, saying, okay, now we see this. Maybe it's something that just for one reason that hadn't been seen. Now let's go tackle it. Because when I look at this and I see the percentages of our African American Hispanic students who are enrolled in Algebra 1 compared to other subgroups and other economic disadvantage as well, the question I now have is, all right, well, then what are we doing in grades leading up to that to get students, one, prepared to potentially enter Algebra 1 in 8th grade because they can't complete it if they're not enrolled? And then also, what are we doing to educate our parents about what they can be doing either at home or how they can partner with us to make sure we're getting, if their student might be tagged but not being identified or not going through the process to get tested to take it earlier, what are we doing to make sure they have the information they need to be involved?
Yeah, and so a lot of that does go to there's a lot of complexities around what you just said. There's teacher training, right, to make sure that our teachers are not seeing advanced courses as, or some students as having barriers to getting into those advanced courses. An example I use sometimes is English 1. So all of our students who go to high school their freshman year, they take English 1. We don't gatekeep kids out of that course. It's the standard course offered at that point in their career, and that holds true for our math courses too. And so we don't want to push kids too quickly, as I said, into Algebra 1, but we also want to make sure that we're not gatekeeping kids out. That means preparing kids all the way up from pre-K until they're hitting middle school. I was fortunate in August to be in one of our elementary staff development days before right after teachers came back, but before students were here. And the staff was really having a great discussion about what they could do in their math classes, and particularly at 5th grade, to really boost kids to a higher level so that when they made that 5th to 6th grade transition, they'd have more and more students who were seeing themselves and ready as advanced math students and also ready for advanced math. So a lot of it goes to the nuances of the campus discussions with teachers. A lot of it goes to our own PD within the on the broader scale at the district level. And I can tell you it's getting a lot of focus in the district now, which is a really good thing. And that, again, is, I think, a benefit of putting this goal out in the open, and Lone Star Governance is certainly a part of that.
And I do think this is a really strong first step, and we're going to keep kind of feeling our way through this the next several months until we get to where we want it. But I do think it is going to be important. And I agree with Trustee Bassett that these numbers that, again, in the right context and with the context, be provided out for the public to see and digest. And I know when I saw that, but I think back to Trustee Ware's point, I think we're on the same page there with our African American Hispanic students, just making sure that we are providing them the same opportunities to enroll in these classes and make sure that and I love what you're saying about not prejudging some barriers and removing those. So make sure we're just, again, encouraging them to take that high-level math if that's what they're desiring.
I think a couple of things you mentioned earlier. I think we need to continue to enhance our communication piece with parents to know what that opportunity looks like and what it means. And, more communication with parents and families that maybe don't have as much advocacy as other families. And the second part is maybe getting creative with providing bridging opportunities in the summer for kids who would like to accelerate, but they're not quite there yet. But the foundational pieces in math, as you all know, are so critical that you can't just. And that's what was happening with a lot of districts around the nation is they were putting every kid in Algebra 1, but then Algebra 1 wasn't really Algebra 1. And so it was checking a box, but when they got further in math, they didn't have the foundational skills that they missed because they weren't ready for it when they took it. And you can follow the scripting of a teacher in a class and you can pass the class, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're grasping the concepts. So I think it's a delicate balance, but I think we can do more to communicate with our parents. I know in our learning communities, our area superintendents are doing that to make sure everybody knows what opportunities are available. And then, once again, getting creative with opportunities for students maybe in the summer to have bridging opportunities and other things to accelerate faster beyond just the regular school year.
I think a couple of things just to keep in mind as you get more and more involved in this process. One is, these goals were just developed and approved 2 months ago, I believe, right? 2 months ago. So last month, and then a presentation was already given. So I commend the administration for working to, even before the goals were officially adopted, to putting together some reports to give out. So looking at these goals being new and working through some of the processes and the systems that need to be put in place to really look and dive into this data, it's going to take just a little bit of time to get fully into it, but for the board meeting, I haven't seen another school that the board meeting, the goals were actually adopted. You had a progress measure presentation, so that's kudos to all of you guys for the work that you're doing. And I love the conversations, but you can already see some things that are coming to surface, and I just looked at the data just 2 minutes. But when you have over a 90% passage rate with your 7th graders that are taking algebra, and then you have some
we have 100% pass rate.
Okay, 100%.
One or two that missed. Anyway.
Okay, 100% passing the course, 90-something% on the EOC. I just corrected, but when you have that, but then you have some populations of students that aren't being enrolled in this as highly as others. Well, that's something that a plan can be created. And how do you go back and how do you start looking earlier than 7th and 8th grade to bridge some of these gaps and get these students more involved? And what does that plan look like? So that's the exciting part for me, just sitting here and listening to the last few minutes of this data is going to allow the administrative staff to work with the board and the board hold them accountable to reaching these goals. And then how do we reach these goals? You put in these plans to get these student groups that aren't as actively involved in enrolling in these classes enrolled, so that equity piece rises, and then and you're able to meet those goals. And then I agree, Ms. Vesa, with allowing, and Mr. Moses, to getting this data more public. You know, Stephen Covey and some of their work, you know, that you have to have that scoreboard, right? And when that scoreboard's up and people see it, you know what the score is and you know what you need to do to win the game. If the scoreboard's not up, you don't know if you're ahead or behind. So communicating the data as much as possible of what can be communicated, I think that's a very important piece that can be continually worked on and added. And that's not to be an I gotcha. It's to be that motivating factor of where do we need to put our resources and our energy to make sure that we move every kid forward and every kid reaches their full potential.
Yeah, but I think we also have to be very careful so that it's not an I gotcha, because there are some campuses that are middle school campuses with 50, 60% economic disadvantage. And so we know the performance, that's not an excuse at all, but it is definite that there are some schools with 14% economic disadvantaged students. So again, that's why I think back to Trustee Vesa's question even earlier today when we discussed it, the data release and making that public is important, but for us to have that discussion first here, because we have to have the context behind it. Failure to put context to it, people make their own determinations, and when they make their own determinations, we never get an opportunity to get this back.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Dr. Flores, because if you look at that district data broken down by student population group, and I'll just use low socioeconomic, that's the most common across the state, but if low socioeconomic students are scoring lower as a district, then the campuses with a higher percentage of low socioeconomic students is going to score lower than the district average. So it allows that context to be put around that data, and then within that plan, if you address all low socioeconomic students, then those campuses that have more low socioeconomic students are going to get more resources and more effort put into them than the ones that are less, if that's where the data leads. But these discussions and looking at that data is going to drive the decision-making process, and the accountability piece is there, and then raise the performance for all students. So I just commend on the conversations and the work being done to already get some of these reports up. And I think as this practice becomes more and more, I hate to use the word routine because it never is routine. We want to make sure it's specific and individualized. But what kind of information needs to be put into these reports to reach those goals is going to get easier as the systems are built.
And I do want to say, I am so impressed by how much data we get and the presentations because I go and I look at other district stuff too. I'm not just looking at our stuff. And I go and I look at what they're presenting in comparison to the data that we have presented to us, and we get a lot more. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful. I mean, you could ask our legislators, because I go and I take all these presentations to them and I tell them, this is really good stuff. You're not going to find many other districts that have this good information. So I'm really impressed. And that said, I still want people to be able to see that where we are. And it's not, I don't mean it in a way of I gotcha. I just want us to work. I feel like the more public we are, the more transparent we are, the harder we can press towards reaching new goals and achieving new heights for all students in our district. And that's all I want. I don't want to make any campus feel less or more. I just want us all to be pressing towards a higher standard.
So, anyway, go ahead, and I have a question, comment. So I was going to say, we're not taking, this is an update, is this right, this presentation? This isn't a action, but anyway, I didn't mean to delay. I don't know how many more slides you have here, but anyway. Okay, so anyway, I know there's a lot we're working on. We're trying to adopt the Lone Star governance. We're trying to do a lot. I think you've heard from us, from the board, that, the district, whatever, we want to accommodate low, all of our campuses, from low economic disadvantage to high economic, everything, all groups. So I don't want to tweak this halfway through, but I also realize that we're trying to, and I think everybody's trying to say what you measure is what you is what we think is important, and find a way to do that so without breaching any confidentiality. So anyway, with that, I'd like to go on, but Ms. Feller.
So I know you mentioned about updating and changing your tag identification process. Could you mind just typing that out or just write that out? I mean, I kind of followed it. I'm looking at this data on the middle schools, and which, by the way, thank you so much. As a first dive at all this stuff, it's so this is exciting. It's just really exciting to get to look at student data and how can we help. I mean, that's why we all are up here, is how can we help our kids? But there's 3 campuses that significantly are lower in the percentage of middle school students who are enrolled as a 7th grade, which goes back to the tag identification process. And maybe just a summary of what barriers these schools might face, or and having a kid that's gone through this process. And I know that in 3rd grade you go through all of 3rd grade math and half of 4th grade. So if you come into that campus in 4th grade and you're just now identified, well, you've already missed half of 4th grade math if you were to go into tag math as a 4th grader. So I know there's some barriers that I don't know if mobility affects this identification process in the tag, but maybe just a little bit of a offline summary of, and I see you have pushed on your light, you want to follow up on it, but I'm so excited about it. But I honestly, I just feel bad for these campuses that have single digit number of kids that are enrolled in Algebra 1 as 7th graders, because that means they're not identified earlier. And go ahead.
And just to your point about students who are identified later in the process, we do have a summer boot camp to support those students in the transition.
Okay.
And the elementary tag specialists, if a student comes in 4th grade new or 5th grade new, they do have quite an extensive intervention that they do during the school year with those students to catch them up as well. And because of their lack of need for repetition, they are able to catch up relatively quickly. So we do have that in place. And then just to, in general, there are quite a few efforts and measures that are going on at the elementary level, but they haven't trickled up yet. And so we haven't seen them. We anticipate seeing those hit the 7th grade in the next year or two, all of the efforts that have been done and worked on at the elementary level.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So carry on. Thanks.
All right, so Michelle is the second goal progress measure is 5.1, and this is pertaining to students in high school who earn advanced credit for advanced coursework. And so hopefully we've answered a lot of the questions on the algebra presentation, but we're happy to do more on this one as well. And Michelle's going to take it from here.
So we are very fortunate to have quite an array, quite a menu of college credit and high school opportunities. But I'm going to go ahead and segue really quickly before we talk about those specific opportunities. One of the big changes that is happening this year in our course catalog development is we are changing pre-AP to advanced. And the reason that we are doing that, the impetus for that, has been a change in College Board. They have decided to charge for the pre-AP name and some of the things that go with it going forward beginning in the 2021-22 school year. So being proactive, we're going ahead and making that change in the 2021 school year to no longer use the name pre-AP. We have amazing teachers that do amazing work. We have amazing vertical teams, and our AP teachers are working with our pre-AP teachers currently to ensure vertical alignment, and we have every faith that that will continue to happen. So we feel very comfortable with going in that direction. We are going with the advanced title rather than the honors title because we feel very strongly that honors refers to a mindset about students and advanced refers to a mindset about content. And these are courses that are intended to be advanced content, more rigorous, and any student who wants to avail themselves of that opportunity can. The other nice thing about the term advanced is it leads into advanced academic opportunities that bear college credit. So rather than pre-AP, which students see as a pathway to just AP, advanced is our pathway to this array of opportunities for them, whether it be dual credit, on-ramps, IB, or the traditional AP route. So I just wanted to kind of preface that for you as we're talking about equity and access and opening doors for students and broadening opportunities for them. So these are 4 of our opportunities for kids to earn college credit in high school. You're probably pretty familiar with most of them, but some of them have had changes. And so I just wanted to highlight what they are, how they work a little bit, and any changes that may have happened within that arena this year. So we'll start with Austin Community College. That is our dual credit partner right now. That is our primary partner. We are looking at options and opportunities for additional dual credit partners that may equally or better serve our students in some settings and arenas. Our students are not charged tuition for the first 12 classes that they take, as long as they are part of the core or workforce. After that, they are charged tuition, or if it's outside the core languages or workforce, they are also charged tuition, and we have that clearly noted in the courses that are available to them. They do have to pay for their textbook, except for early college, high school. That is completely free for our students. And we have courses that are offered during the school day in the fall and in the spring. And then in the summer, students can go to ACC as well as in the evenings during the school year. And we have, I don't have the data up there for you, but we saw another year of increases in fall, spring, and summer. And we saw over 2,000 additional college credits earned from last year's data to this year's data. So if you think about those credit hours and how much each credit hour costs, we have saved our students and our families quite a bit through that option and opportunity, as well as given students the opportunity to go into college a little bit ahead of the game, possibly take fewer classes each semester or double major and still get out on time and those kinds of things. So another option and opportunity that we have is through the University of Texas On-Ramps program. This has been the first year that the On-Ramps program has charged, and that is because they were part of they had a legislative allotment, but they're a victim of their own success. The participation across the state grew so rapidly that the allotment they were given didn't suffice to sustain the program, so they had to pass that cost along. There is a discount for our students who are on free and reduced lunch, and we are seeking additional support opportunities financially for those students that may need it as well. Our success rate with our on-ramps, which we now offer at all 5 high schools in, I believe it's 7 different courses, we saw an 80% success rate last year of students earning the actual college credit. That is a UT transcripted credit that they have that is transferable to anywhere. And so they're really enjoying that program. My daughter is actually in a course right now and loves it. It is rigorous, but they are having that support of the classroom teacher. Remember, on-ramps, you have the college professor who gives you the college grade, and you have the high school teacher who gives you the high school grade. So it is a very low-risk opportunity for our students. And then you get to our more traditional options that we've offered for several years, the IB Diploma Program, which is at Westwood and at Stony Point, and we continue to see growth and success in there. We're very excited about some of the things happening in our IB world as far as supports, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. And then our advanced placement that is also at all 5 of our comprehensive high schools. We did pull it out of the early college high school this year, and the rationale behind doing that is our students were obtaining too many credits. And so you can only transfer 60 credits into a 4-year institution. And the way it was set up, they were getting more than 60 college credit hours, or on target to get more than 60 college credit hours. And so we, so as not to put them in jeopardy of having too many, we pulled that out of the early college. But we do get the opportunity to boast that we have the most successful early college program in the ACC district. Our kids are doing amazing, and we are very proud to report that we have a National Merit semifinalist and 2 commended scholars at the early college high school campus. So just a little bit, though, about why we pulled AP out of that campus. Another change to AP this year is they've gone from spring semester registration to fall semester exam registration. And this is the result of feedback that has been given across the nation. Several schools and districts already were having kids register and pay in the fall, and those districts found that students persisted better and ended up taking the exam at a higher rate and doing better on the exam. And so College Board officially piloted it last year and then rolled it out nationwide this year. So we are anticipating that we will see the same results as the pilot, so our numbers should continue to increase. We broke 10,000 AP exams this year. So we are seeing in all 4 of these opportunities that any student can avail themselves of, we are seeing continuous growth. Nobody is robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're finding more and more kids to take advantage of these opportunities. So some of the things that we are doing to impact students registering for these courses. One of the things that we have found out is that parents and even teachers at our elementary and middle school don't know what the opportunities are. They don't know what they can go and do. So we created a resource, a college credit and high school side-by-side chart that we provide to parents and students. It's on the district website. Our elementary tag specialists actually looked at this at a recent meeting so that they could be more familiar with the options and opportunities as parents ask them about those things. It's been really helpful. It answers questions like, who teaches the course? How is the credit transcripted? What is the cost associated? Where does the course take place? And has links that parents and students can go to find out more information about each of the offerings. Additionally, we have put into our family seminar series a college credit and high school session that goes through basically what I've told you about each of the 4 options, but in much greater detail. So parents walk away from that with a clear understanding of what the options and opportunities are, and they can then pick and choose. So they may want to choose a math class from On-Ramps, but humanities from dual credit, and science from AP. And they're able to do that, and they're able to be informed on how to do that. Further providing information, all of our campuses have advanced academics nights where students and parents can come and find out about all of these opportunities at the high school. And one of the things that we've discovered is our campuses might have an advanced academics night, but they didn't really include all of the options. They just looked at some of them. And then people that didn't know what dual credit was about or didn't know what On-Ramps was about, they didn't go to those individual meetings, those individual parent nights about those individual programs. By embedding all of that information initially in the advanced academics nights, then following it up with program-specific information nights for parents and students, we're seeing more parents that are going to those other, and we anticipate even more this year, going to those other information sessions to get that deeper dive into that, because they now know what it is. It's not just a name on a flyer. Another piece that we're super excited about is pursuing the middle years program at Stony Point High School. We really think that that is going to be a game changer when we're talking about preparing those 9th and 10th grade students with the mindset to continue into that IB diploma program at Stony Point once they're in the 11th grade. And so we're in the process of implementing some of the things that we have to do before we go through authorization, and we anticipate submitting for authorization and getting that approved within the next year or 2. Remember that that's typically a 2 or 3 year process that we're working through. And that will be a school within a school in such as it will not be wall-to-wall the way it is at middle school, but any student who wants to be a part of the MYP at Stony Point will be able to take those classes and be part of that family of learners. And then the early college high school, to continue to recruit students, they are doing presentations at all the middle schools. We just had a very exciting planning session yesterday about the marketing and came up with some really innovative ideas that we're really excited to implement, including having announcements at middle school sporting activities about the opportunity. Because again, if you don't know what early college high school is, you're not necessarily going to go to a presentation about it at the school. And so we're trying to make sure that everybody is very well aware of it. And then Dr. Laura Darden has done an amazing job really in invigorating our teachers that are working in the AVID program, providing them with a ton of information about these opportunities. They're using that side-by-side chart with their students. They're advising their students on the opportunities that they can avail themselves of. So we're excited about the work that's being done through AVID to support students in these advanced courses. Some additional efforts that are going on at the various campuses, classroom guidance presented by counselors to students, the counseling sessions. I actually had my daughter's this afternoon, her one-on-one counseling session at the high school. Those are happening for all of our students. College admissions nights, 8th grade registration parent nights, lots of different opportunities to get more information, to engage with parents and students, to provide them with the rich array of opportunities and let them make informed decisions about which opportunities, not are the opportunities right, but which opportunities are right for their individual student or students.
Should I do this one? Okay. So if you'll remember, Goal Progress 5.1 is in support of our overall college career military readiness goal of 90% by 2024. And based on the data we have here, we appear to be on track to meet or exceed our 64% goal for the current year. My data challenge here was not merging 6th and 7th grade, but realizing quite late in the process and up against the deadline that the dual credit data did not look right. So you have another creative solution in your tables. I really had to talk to Michelle for quite a bit to understand that what's in our district data systems are only the dual credit courses that are offered on our campuses. So if students are leaving, they get out at 2, they go take a course late in the afternoon, or they take a course in the evening. Those are not in our data systems. But we do have information from ACC about who's enrolled. So we found a way to creatively pull those two numbers for you. So that said, knowing that our internal systems are not reflecting all those courses being taken on ACC campuses, I think we're in a good place to say that we'll meet or exceed. Now, I'll just add that what Michelle reminded me, not every student's going to be successful in earning their credit. Some will withdraw. We're still early in the semester here. But even so, we're feeling pretty confident about this goal as well.
We're going to get a couple of lights here for questions. So Mr. Moses and Ms. Vessa, and then Mr. Meth.
Thanks, President. Again, thank you for this data. And I think there's a lot of bright spots in here. The fact we have students that are earning too many credit hours that can't transfer is that it's a problem, but it's a great problem to have. I think that just goes to show the great work our staff is doing, the great work our local campus counselors are doing to help make sure they're being mindful of that issue so they can take courses that work for them. And as I'm looking at this data, so this is last school year, 9,171 students that were enrolled in advanced coursework, and then 9,036 who earned a credit. So 98.5% of the students who were enrolled in advanced course earned a credit. That is remarkable.
That's correct.
And one of the things that you have to remember is did they earn the credit in the course, or did they earn the college credit?
Okay.
So they're earning the credit in the course. We had 76% of our AP test takers get a 3 or higher on the exam experience last spring.
Okay, so that's how that number matches up. Okay, I was trying to follow. Okay, gotcha.
80% of our on-ramp students were successful in earning the college credit. And then I don't remember the exact percentage for our dual credit students. I can calculate that and get that to you if you need it. And then, I don't have the exact percentage on the top of my head for the IB students either. But so there is a difference between being successful in the high school course and
Can we have that
college
differentiated out next time? Because the way that reads, that's the way it looked. So I just want to make sure we're looking at numbers the right way. All right, thanks.
Ms. Vessa, then Mr. Math.
Yes, thank you so much for this data. Thank you for going the extra mile and trying to get all the ACC data. So I kind of grew up probably a little different than most people think when they don't think I grew up in a household where my mom worked really weird hours. My parents were divorced. My dad was a firefighter, so he worked really weird hours. And my parents didn't come to info nights ever. And so if I wanted to be in advanced courses or know about a program, I pretty much had to get there on my own. And we lived 2 miles from the school, and I didn't have a ride. And so for a lot of kids in similar circumstances, if it's an info night for parents, that kid's not going to learn about it. They're not going to their parents aren't going to come. My parents didn't come, to anything, ever. So if we're going to really make effort, especially in our, campuses that have a higher eco-dis percentage, we have to grab those students and say to them, these are the programs that are available to you, and give them the information. And then when their parents are, somehow available, they'll share and say, hey, Mom, please just sign this. All you have to do is just sign it. Just sign it. Because that's what happened to me. I had to just say, hey, just sign this. Don't worry about it. I'm taking care of it. Just sign it. Because they didn't come to anything. They didn't know anything. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the ECHS presentations, there are presentations during the day at every middle school to present that information to the students. And those one-on-ones with the counselors happen during the school day. And those counselors are telling the students about those opportunities.
There's only 15 minutes in those counseling meetings.
That is true.
They're
we
really
also
short.
have the teachers that are working really hard to provide students. If you're a ninth grade teacher, they're talking to the kids about the pathway that they have opportunities for. It's one of the reasons that we have the Summer Advanced Academics Conference for all 6th through 12th grade teachers. They come to that opportunity, and what I didn't mention is that picture is actually a panel of students who have taken advantage of these kinds of courses, answering teacher questions. And most of that room at that conference breakout session was middle school teachers coming to the Advanced Academic Conference to find out more about the high school options for college credit so that they could better inform their students when their students ask them in the classroom. So we are trying to engage in as many different ways as we can think of through social media, through providing videos and information. In fact, that's one of my to-dos is I've got a list of various videos and things that I want to upload to the website. Trying to get information to everyone in as many different modalities and methods as possible. So that because I totally understand. I came from blue collar family as well, and there wasn't a whole lot of going up to the school at night because people were working and traveling and that kind of thing. So I get it.
Okay, got a couple of key questions, key comments. Mr. Math and Ms. Feller.
So when I think of all the good things going on in our district, this is one of the gems. And I'm fortunate that when I look at the menu of opportunities between my two kids, we've hit the grand slam. Both have gone to Austin Community College. Both have done AP credits. One has done on-ramps. One has done IB. So my son's a freshman at UT. He's placed out of more than a year of classes. So I've saved $25,000, which is phenomenal. Then on top of that, he's going to stay there for 4 years, but he's going to get a master's degree instead of a bachelor's degree. So what I'm saying is both financially and academically, this is just such a huge push. And the more we could spread these classes throughout the district, the better. I mean, I feel fortunate, but, fortunately I'm in a comfortable financial situation, and there are many less fortunate than I that could really benefit from these monetary incentives. So keep doing it.
Yeah.
My kids, my son placed out of math and physics and biology and chemistry and English and Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying, what district offers Chinese as an advanced placement course? So thank you.
Great. Ms. Weir and then Ms. Feller.
Actually, thank you, because I was actually just going to follow up a little bit on what Corey was saying, and actually Steve, in that it made me think about our numbers for our tag students and identifying, and I know you're working on that, but as we're teaching the teachers to identify the students, I mean, it kind of goes back to our equity issue to make sure that all our students are being encouraged to take it, not just some students.
Absolutely. We have a very open access policy where any student that wants to, but we also have a very rigorous recruitment process where the campuses are looking at things like AP potential that's generated from the PSAT that the kids are taking on October 30th, and looking for students who might not have chosen to avail themselves of those opportunities but have the ability to be successful in that environment, and they're pulling those kids in and saying, you didn't sign up for this, but you could be successful here. And one of the things that in some of the conferences that I've attended is the Noah's Ark kind of idea, that instead of pulling kids in individually, you pull them in 2 by 2 so that they have someone who is their peer that they can go into those courses together and see that, we can rely on each other, we can support each other, and they're more likely to take advantage of that class when they have a friend, a buddy, that's going into it with them.
Okay. Ms. Feller, and then I have a couple questions.
I just have a real quick question. When you said the change from pre-AP to advanced in the title, does it actually change the curriculum at all?
Nothing changes except the title of the course.
I like the change,
same
by the
weighting
way.
and everything.
I like the change because you have kids that maybe are coming out of middle school who've never been in an honors type class, and then you say, hey, in your freshman year, take a pre-AP class, and if you just say it's advanced, and I really like the change.
Thank you.
I think it stinks that College Board is charging to use that term, though, by the way. Although I like the change, I think that stinks.
It was an unintended positive consequence.
So a couple questions or comments. So I like the idea of Noah's Ark, 2 people, because I know that a lot of kids say, well, I'll try it, and if my best friend will go, they know they get in the same class together. So that's a great idea. So I'm glad to see that. So you mentioned a couple things, and it's just been mentioned here again. Equity, you mentioned earlier about rob Peter to pay Paul, which made me think back to, we got an email from a parent who's not at Westwood complaining, questioning the top 10 ranking. So this isn't directly related to this, but it is. I just want to make sure that the Westwood program that we put together, or that we voted on, that the Westwood team put together and brought to us, is not penalizing other campuses. So I don't know. I'm bringing that up because it made me think of it. I know that's not directly related to this, but you know what I'm talking about, the top 10% not being reported for college. And there was an email, and I mentioned Dr. Flores and Dr. Presley. And so I hope that gets addressed. And anyway, brought that forward. And then the last thing I want to mention also is we heard tonight with the dyslexia parents. We've heard it periodically throughout the years. I didn't know about this. I didn't know, as Ms. Vesta said, I didn't know about this. This kind of goes back to the number of students in every classroom. We can always push the limit, 22 students per, for the younger grades, but as we get older, as the students get beyond that, you start putting more and more students in a classroom. It's legal, but the teachers just don't have the time to say, just like what you said, hey, pull a student and say, you might want to consider signing up for this advanced placement pre-AP or AP program or course, because it'll, and then it kind of goes back to the counseling, the 15 minutes. Is 15 minutes adequate for the guidance counselor? And then we're talking about the other counselors. So I just don't want us to keep pushing that limit. There's some value to that. And as Mr. Math says, it's worth $25,000 to him, that he got that. Now, I'm sure he was hoping it, but just think of all of the students that maybe could be told, I think you can take this AP course and pass it. Or you can take the on-ramps, or you can do the ACC. As long as the teachers have the time and resources that they can reach out to those students and encourage them, And guess what? Those teachers may never see personally on their record the success that those kids do later on. Of course, it'll look back and say, well, a lot of these students from this teacher did well. So whatever he or she's doing, replicate it. So Okay, that's a lot of comments. So anyway, I was just going to say, threw a lot in there. Dr. Flores, you have
Yeah,
any?
just one real quick comment. When I saw Margot Vogelpool, our director or coordinator for our early childhood education, that's another thing that it's going to take time. But having full day pre-K is going to pay dividends, and this is just our second year. And so once those gaps are identified and continue to be aggressively identified, and then it's going to lead to what this board really needs to be able to have. Where are those gaps identified? What are we doing in the summer programs to enrich some of these things? And then the budget that's going to be required to make it more equitable. So I love this discussion and took copious notes. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Moses.
Yeah, I think because it made me think back on the presentation we had last month about CTE. So when you look back at those numbers and how 82% of the high school students are in a CTE class, and you look at the number of students that are enrolled in these advanced classes, it really is a testament to our students and the work our counselors are doing to ensure that they're getting some type of higher education preparation, whether that is a 2-year certificate or being able to get a job when they leave high school or they go to a 4-year college. It really is a testament to the work we're doing and making sure that a Round Rock ISD diploma means a whole lot in the world that they're entering. So thank you all.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. All right. All right, we'll go on to agenda item G3, monthly financials.
Kenneth Audix at the break said mine's going to be very quick, I promise. So he's going to hold us to that. We're going to hold you to that promise on monthly financials, Mr. Audix, Dr. Audix.
Always put it on the efficiency guy, So, all right. So, good evening, President Chadwell, members of the board, and Dr. Flores. I'm going to go over the August financials with you, and going forward, as we previously discussed, over the next 2 months, I plan to include the financials in the board update, and then once a quarter do the financial update at the board meeting as we are tonight. Obviously, if something important comes up, I can always bring that up at the next board meeting. So a couple of items before we get into the financials. Rosanna said the auditors have almost finished with the audit for the 2018-19 fiscal year that we just finished. Our audit firm, Maxwell Lock and Ritter, will give us their information on November 1st. Rosanna and her team will then forego sleep in order to have the 150-page audit report ready for your approval at the next board meeting. On the consent agenda, the quarterly budget amendment is on the consent agenda. Last October, to sort of give you context, that document was 25 pages long. The one in your packet tonight is one amendment that fits on that amount of paper. So in terms of efficiency, the push for efficiency continues. One final thing is on transportation. We've got that out to bid with the intent of contracting with the firm to cover our unfilled routes, obviously not the whole program, but even with the $3 an hour raise, we still have routes that are short. So when that happens, mechanics drive, admin staff drive, service breaks down as a result of that. So the bids are due next Thursday. The plan is to bring a recommendation to the board next month for the best firm that comes out as a result of that process. So a little update there. Regarding the August financials in your packet for the general fund, for the month of August, we had total revenue of $2.7 million, had expenses of right at $34.6 million. Expenses were about $1.2 million better than planned. The revenue for the month was $4.1 million less than budget. Most of that's just driven by a timing issue in terms of state funding. We've got attendance through the first 6 weeks, and it's in your write-up. So our attendance, the number of kids that we budgeted, we still expect to hit our budget, so it's just sort of a timing issue, not an expectation that our revenue is going to come in under our budget for the year-to-date. So for July and August, the 2 months we've lived this fiscal year, our total revenue is $5.4 million, expenses of $64 million. So expenses through the first 2 months are $4.6 million better than planned. Our fund balance at the end of August was $165.9 million. On food service, that had revenue for the month of $1.7 million, which was right on budget. Expenses were intentionally, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, they're $500,000 above budget. So what's going on there is that the TDA only allows you to have a maximum fund balance in your food service fund. They don't want you to have more than 3 months' worth of fund balance in your fund. We've got 5 months of fund balance. So Yana has created a intentional spend down plan on that excess fund balance. So we've started buying additional kitchen equipment, replacing things that are worn out, that sort of thing. We've done that at 15 campuses. It includes things like ovens and warmers, dishwashers, freezers, and refrigerators. Our plan this year is to spend down fund balance by $3.1 million. That 2 additional months that we've got is basically a little over $4 million of additional money over and above what they want us to carry. So it's an intentional spend down on that'll continue over the course of this fiscal year. In terms of debt service for the month, we simply had a little amount of revenue, $138,000, no expenses, because the August debt payment, we actually made that in July. So our fund balance at the end of August is $22.9 million. We make semi-annual debt payments, so our next payment, as it's stated there in the first column, will be on February 1st at $19 million. On the consent agenda, and you're well aware because we've talked this at PIB and the facility meeting for the last couple of months, but there's a parameter order in the consent agenda. Our intent is to sell the remaining 2018 authorization as well as refund 2 outstanding existing bonds, the 2010B and the 2010D Build America bonds, because we can refund those just like refinancing your house. We can refinance at a lower interest rate than what we're currently paying and save a significant amount of money by doing that. So we're asking the board to approve that tonight. Then we've got a bond rating call scheduled with Moody and Fitch on Wednesday. Our intent is to sell the bond on November the 19th. And from an interesting educational piece, have talked with Sherry Bonds with our CTE program, and our intent is to literally on the day of the sale in real time get our CTE students to actually watch the sale in real time as it's going on, as the bids are coming in, all that sort of thing. So see the real world as it's happening with what we're actually living. So real excited about that. Some other districts have done that, and the students and faculty board, will be invited. We'll get the information out as well. And I've seen it myself in real time on a previous sale, and it's interesting to see it as it's actually happening. So that's that piece. In terms of our next on the bonds piece, we've got interest income for the month of August of $400,000, had expenses of bond projects of $5.7 million. So we've got a current fund balance for our 3 outstanding bonds that we still have money to spend on of $213 million. And then finally for the capital projects fund that we created it back in June at the end of last fiscal year, we've spent $268,000 in the month of August, $296,000 for the year. And so, any questions?
Ms. Bessa.
So first, that was the first thing I noticed, that when I looked at the Met budget amendment, there was only one item. It was very exciting. So congratulations. I do have a question on our refunding those bonds. How many years left did we have to pay on those? And when we refinance them, is it going to be over a longer period than what we have currently remaining?
Right. So in the rearview mirror, the previous bonds that we've done, we finance them over a 25-year period of time. And so the normal bond a lot of times will have a stated maturity. So like these have 25 years. And they'll have what's called a call date on it, which would say you could call the bonds just like what we're doing, that, hey, if it's in our favor and the interest rates are lower, we can say, hey, I'll give you your money back because I'm going to, like if I originally borrowed from Mason, and I'd say I borrowed at 5%, and now rates are...
Man, you're being generous there, 5%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I charge a real good premium.
So whatever we originally agreed to, if I could say, hey, the market will now allow me to buy from Corey for less than that, I would say, hey, Mason, I'm going to give you your money. I'm going to borrow from you to pay you, and then I start paying a lower interest rate. So that's what's going on. And so that first window was 25 years. Okay, we've lived 10 years and we did the call. Well, we can literally structure that next deal. We're not going to go longer than the remaining 15 years on it, and so that's our intent. Is hey, we've lived 10, we can refinance the remaining amount of time for a lower interest rate. That's our plan.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Always good. I always enjoy seeing that, getting review and updates on a monthly basis. And I know there's blips in in our expenses and revenue, and so it's always good to see that as well. So thank you, Dr. Ottix. All right, board members, go to agenda H1. It's not really anything to discuss here, but it's there. Board training hours. Any comments on that? Just if you want to pull it up, I don't know if it's showing up there, but everybody exceeded their numbers required by law by a wide margin, and expect that first-year trustees have more training. But anyway, any discussion on that?
Amber won.
Yeah, so that's right.
It's a close second, though.
Okay. Well, here's something I do want to say. I don't want us to ever get into the point where we are competing, because it's in the past where I've seen a lot of hours on there, and somebody has to pay for that. So anyway,
Yeah.
Thank you. We all met it, so thank you for that. All right, we'll go to agenda item. We'll go to agenda I, items consideration by consent.
I did send an email. I was hoping we could maybe pull off the board self constraints, and I don't know if we actually want to discuss them.
I have a request about another one. I want to just get a quick update as well, but can I get it?
I was hoping we could actually talk about those a little bit more. I was hoping it wouldn't be 10:25. I don't know if we want to talk about them now, or if we can just.
Mr. Moses.
Well, I'm not going to request we pull this item, but I know that on item I-3, we're going back to a negotiated sale. I know we've had a lot of conversations about that. I know I have a different opinion on what I think is the best for taxpayers in ensuring that we get the lowest rate. And I hope we will continue to have those conversations throughout the years as we sell bonds and make sure we are actually, when we go to market, getting the best possible rate for our taxpayers' dollars. But not just because of the hour, but also because I don't want to make my colleagues sit through another hour-long exercise. I feel like I beat that horse pretty good a year ago. But I think, again, I just want to make sure that when we do this in the future, that we have that conversation and we look at that and decide what's the best case of time. But these are our bonds we need to go sell. These are projects that we need to get going. And so just want to make sure people know we're going to continue that dialogue in the future.
And that's one I wanted to just highlight as well, that the 3 and how it's a 50-something page document in here, and you're proposing a slightly different accelerated, I guess, bond sale. Is that right? If I'm reading the details of it. And I don't know what page I saw it on. But anyway, if you want to give a quick review of anything on that agenda item.
Basically, the highlights of the deal, in addition to the two, like we'll be selling the two refunded bonds, the 2010B and the 2010D bonds, and then the intent is to sell the remaining authorization from the 2018 bond. There's roughly $325 million left in that. The original plan was to sell that in over the course of three different sales. So we did the first sale back in April, $182 million, and then there were 2 additional planned sales. The reason is just straightforward in terms of why it makes sense to sell everything right now. As we've kind of talked about before, interest rates are just at absolute historically low levels, and with what's kind of in some instances an inverted yield curve, normally the longer you borrow, the higher the interest rate you pay for that time. It's literally very flat now, to where for our reality, if we borrow $450 million, $460 million, and okay, we're not going to turn around the next morning and boom, we just spent $460 million, so we're going to borrow some money before we've actually got a project to spend the money on. But what that allows us is that while we're waiting on that, we can literally be investing that money for a similar, like the pools right now are paying roughly 2%. Okay, so most of our money is going to be invested in the pools. The interest rate expectation on this deal is roughly 2%. So it's kind of like while we're waiting on the project, it's not going to be costing us. We're going to be earning what our interest expense is. What Terry would tell you, and I can give you some actual sort of like a math example, is that the inflation, the biggest win on selling it right now is that to the extent we can lock in projects early and not incur the additional interest expense on that, that's where our win is going to be. And so to give you context, the original plan was like to have this sale be like $180 million, the next sale be $145 million. That was the original sort of intent. Okay, but just take this as my logic. By selling that $145 million now, okay, I can sell it a year earlier than the original plan. Okay, and it's in essence not going to cost me anything to do that because for 1 year I can earn that whole year of time what it's costing me in interest. Okay, but if I can lock in a bond project, if that gives me the funds so that Terry or technology says, hey, we're going to put this out to bid. We're not going to wait a year to have the money. We're going to bid this project right now and get a locked-in price. Well, if inflation was 5% on that $145 million, that's over $7 million of savings we're going to have in bond projects by not waiting a year. So it's a deal of there's no downside to us. We're not expecting to incur any additional interest as a result of this. And we can literally build as fast as we can build. We can do projects as fast as we can do them and save ourselves money on what that project would cost us versus if we waited to do that project.
Okay, so that answered my question. I think I knew most of that, but thank you for clarifying that. And that was one of the things that, in the past, when we voted on the bond a year ago, we were going to do like 3 sales, kind of spread it out. We didn't want to burden our debt too fast. And we always said, well, there's no need to sell it all at once. There's not enough resources, not enough contractors to do all the work we needed. And I understand that the facilities committee, I think you discussed it there, and then also as well. But anyway, I've got a couple comments, and then Mr. Opel here if we need to make a comment. Be prepared. But anyway, I think Ms. Vessa and then Mr. Math.
So I was a little nervous about this, selling all of it, because it's my understanding that even though we're going to make money on the debt while it's waiting, that money is actually not going to go probably to pay off the cost of the interest. It's just kind of going to go into fund balance, correct?
Right.
So it's not actually like we're going to pay the money that we earn towards the debt. It's just going to be additional monies that we can spend on projects. So that concerned me. But then when I listened to the facilities committee meeting and he said, well, I can lock in all these projects today at today's prices instead of next year's prices, that kind of pushed me over the edge. I was like, okay, well, I know the inflationary situation we are right now with construction. So that was enough to be like, okay, I'm okay with it. I'll go with the whole bond sale because we're in a really it's a difficult time in terms of inflation for construction projects. So I agree that if we can lock in those prices now, that's a win for our district.
Yeah, and here I want to make this point because I think it's important because hey, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, okay? But the logic, hopefully I can explain it with just these 2 pieces right here, okay? Because literally what we're talking about in the difference between selling everything all at one time or selling in 2 different periods of time, let's just talk through a math example, okay? If I sold all of this at one time and say that the rate, just for easy math, was 10%, okay? So I borrowed $40 today, okay? And I'm going to pay 10% interest in a year, okay? So 10% interest in a year, that would be $4. right, that I'd owe, okay? And the next year I'd owe another $4, okay? But if I said, look, I'm going to borrow this, and every year I'm going to pay 10% interest for the next 15 years, okay? So every year I'm paying $2 on this one every year for 15 years, okay? So what's the difference in terms of my total interest cost? If I say, okay, start the timeline and hold these two bills together, and every year I'm paying 10% interest. So next year is $4, and I simply do this. And so I do this 15 times, and every time I do it, it's costing me $4, okay? What's the difference if I then hold these two bills and I stagger them by 1 year, and I just say, okay, here, every year, both of these are going to go over a 15-year period of time, costing me $2. Whether I put them together and go like this, or whether I go like this, both of them after 15 years have incurred the exact same interest expense to the taxpayer. And by locking, the other thing I've done, and it's a big variable, with instead of doing this one I know my interest rate, this one I don't, okay? So I'd much rather tell the taxpayer, interest rates right now are at all-time low. If you look back 20 years, like 99% of the time, 15-year debt, this is the lowest interest rate it's been in a long time, okay? I'd much rather tell the community, I locked that in right now today. I didn't take a gamble, hey, all that kind of thing. The door number 2 is I'm only locking this in. And if I come to you next year and I say, hey, you know what, interest rates aren't at an all-time low anymore, it's not 2% interest, it's something higher than that, you're not going to look favorably on me if I do that, because this is a known. I mean, we can do this today, lock it in, and it's a done deal. We've guaranteed ourselves extremely low interest rate on our money. If we just do part of it, this other is exposure. It can be a lot higher than what it is right now.
Okay. Mr. Math.
I move that we approve action items I-1 through I-6 by consent. I purposely pulled I-7. I think it would be helpful to have our Vice President part of that conversation.
I'll second the motion, but I want to make sure hang on. I want a clarification on the motion. So you're saying you're pulling it not for discussion tonight, but for a later meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Still second. Yeah, we're fine.
All right.
Make sure I understood.
So I have a motion and a second for action agenda consideration by consent J1 through J6. And just real quick.
It was I-1 through
I'm sorry,
I-6.
I-1 through I-6. Thank you. Back to the financial thing. Mr. Opie, you have anything you want to say about the process or anything like that? Okay. Dr. Flores, identify that you're the, I forgot your title, but it's Bond Counsel. And you've worked with us for many years, so thank you for your work. All right, so we have a motion for J1 through J6.
I-1 through I-6.
What do I keep saying? I-1. I guess I'm too hurry. All right, I-1 through I-6. Any further discussion?
I saw folks from Estrada Hinojosa are here, so we appreciate y'all being here.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. All right. Now, this is going to get a little interesting here. So now we go to J. J1, discussion and possible action on the board's revised interlocal agreement for Round Rock Independent School District and Williamson County for school resource officers. With that, we have this document here that is labeled confidential, and I think we're going to go back in and get a quick update on it. Is that our plan? Or are we ready to? I think we're going to. Any discussion?
Could we discuss it in open session until it doesn't make sense to discuss it?
Can we, just real quick, I'm fine. But Doug, can you weigh in there? What's probably from a negotiating standpoint, what's going to make us be in the best position?
Right. So I'm about a step or so removed from the development of the document and the discussions that have been going on between the parties. So I'd be at a little bit at a disadvantage to describe to you where the exact parameters are about the negotiations. So I would defer to those who have been involved to maybe elucidate and tell us, okay, where those parameters are. If that's hard to do in this kind of setting, then I would advise us to go into the closed meeting and start the discussion there and then come out and amplify things that we are more comfortable talking about in open session.
Can I ask a question? I mean, because I know at one point, Amber, you were talking about waiting for information, something from Williamson County. Is that included in what we have?
So I did reach out, just so everybody's aware of what the process was in revising this. Is I took our most recently adopted and approved contract that we had that had been approved with Williamson County Sheriff's Office. I went through this, made the changes that we as a board had discussed, highlighted them in yellow. I did go over those changes with the Safety and Security Director, Mr. Yarborough, to make sure that anything that was included in there didn't violate any law enforcement policies, procedures, codes, things like that. The one thing that, and after that, I did have a meeting with administration, and I had spoken with 2 trustees to not violate the Open Meetings Act. Those 2 trustees were invited also to go over those changes, just to make sure from a legal perspective that the language, because I didn't go to law school, make sure from a legal perspective the changes that were in there.
I think it would be helpful for people to know who those 2 trustees were.
Yeah, it was.
I was invited. I just got the meeting invite, and so I didn't know who put it together or what it was. I just got
the first 2 trustees that reached out to talk to me about this, I spoke with, and it was Nikki and Mason. I did invite both of them to the meeting that we had at the administration building. Nikki was unable to come. Mason did come. We went through the changes line by line to make sure that there were no legal conflicts and things like that. Really no content was added or changed except for one small, and
there's a lot of content changed.
One small change that was, the wording was changed on I think it was on number 4 about salaries and benefits, so that we wouldn't have to renegotiate this every year, that we would include language that pay raises would be equal to what they would get with the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, which is apparently a perk if you're in law enforcement to know that you're going to get a pay raise equal to the county. That's the only change that was made in that meeting, I believe. Then I reached out to the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, left a message with them asking if I could meet to go over this. One thing that is still a big unknown is it's attached on here as Attachment A, which is the cost structure. That is exactly the same cost structure that was on the last one. I didn't make any changes to that because I don't know how any of those facts and how those figures were arrived. And so I wanted to go over those actual costs to make sure that this contract was revenue neutral. I did receive a phone call back, and the first available time, Deputy Chief Ryle was out on vacation last week, and the first available time that I could meet with him is tomorrow. So I was not able to go over this as it sits right now with anyone from the Sheriff's Office.
Can I just, I had a few small changes that I was going to suggest. I don't think they're anything that I can't say in public.
I don't have a problem either way. I thought from a legal perspective, if we're discussing contracts, it's supposed to happen in closed session, but I'm not making that determination. I'm fine with discussing it out here as long as we're not violating any legal.
Well, and you're going to take, I mean, because some of it I almost feel like we need to wait till after tomorrow if you're meeting with him tomorrow.
No, I don't have a meeting with them scheduled tomorrow since it was after. I didn't take that meeting because it was after this meeting that we were going to have, and I can take whatever we approve or whatever changes. If I would have had a chance to meet with them before, I would have taken my draft, but I wanted to get some direction from the board as to they wanted me to follow up after tonight. So I don't have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow.
Okay. Well, okay.
Does that make sense?
I feel like, yes. And, I mean, I guess I'm still kind of thinking back through it is a contract, but we're about to just show it to them anyway. I mean, as soon as you go and meet with them. So I guess I don't feel like we need to go into closed if it's not.
I'm fine with the way. It was more really from a making sure we're, as much as we can, get on the same page before we go, hey, here's this. But if we want to do it here, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to give my first impressions. I didn't see anything that was added that caused me any significant angst. That said, I think it's very important that whatever goes to the Commissioner's Court is something that Sheriff Chody can endorse. So I'm okay with the wording as is, but it's not me. It's not my opinion alone that matters. You know, if Sheriff Chody were to push back on something, I personally may be amenable to that, depending on what it was.
So I want to add to that while I'm thinking about it real quick. So the general perception is to go to Sheriff Chody with this first, either through Chief Ryle, and if they look
I'm
at
looking for direction from the board.
No, I
at this
think
point.
that's perfect.
And then
I
if
think
he
we need to
says,
go to the
okay,
Commissioner's Court with it. They're the ones who ultimately have to approve it, and the ones who have
Well, and I
taken
think once
action.
we vote on it, it'll have to go to them. But I do think making sure that Sheriff Chody is okay with
at least close.
because part of what we've included is the essential duties, and so I would want to make sure that he was comfortable with that before we sent it to his bosses to vote on.
Well, they're not his boss. They're elected
Well.
secretary. I know what you mean, but yeah.
But, yeah.
but yeah.
Well,
So
I
let me
mean,
tell
and
you-
He's made it clear they're not his bosses. and
The
they make it clear
language
that they're not his
underneath
boss.
the essential duties, and it comes straight from, I mean,
Yeah,
I
it
spent.
looked fine. It absolutely looked
I just
fine.
wanted to say, it did come straight from NASRO as well as some other job descriptions, and really it didn't change anything, but I made sure that we added language in there. Specifically, I think it's important to look at B, where it says, under scope of deputies' essential duties, A is to enforce state and local laws. B is to refrain completely from functioning as a school disciplinarian. The SRO is not to be involved in the enforcement of disciplinary infractions that do not constitute violations of the law. Just so that everybody's aware of what part we're talking about. And I thought that was very important to include, to make sure that we communicated with the sheriff's office that we do not expect any of these officers to be disciplinarians on our campuses.
Right. And I totally appreciated that. I was just trying to say that I agreed with Ms. Rath. My only two actually very small things were on page 2, where I just didn't know when we say a district elementary campus to house the Rovers. If only one elementary school has officers on campus, I just sort of foresee. I didn't know if you meant that to be like they just had to be at some elementary, or if there's
Yeah,
like
at a
one.
random one.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I wasn't quite clear about. If they were going to have an office, is it going to be at one? Is that what we're asking, for them to be at one elementary, or to just light somewhere?
I may ask Mr. Yarbrough to come down and address that one specifically, because that one did come from him. One of the things that we struggle with currently with our contract is we don't necessarily always know where some of the staff is that we're paying for. And we did increase a sergeant, so we would have one on the east side and one on the west side, because Mr. Yarbrough is spending an incredible amount of his time driving from one side of the district to the other side of the district and responding to campus emergencies. And so what his suggestion was that rather than house them in the same building that he is, house one on each side. And I don't know exactly how that, to me, that kind of falls under a management decision as opposed to a board decision, but how you kind of saw them structured with a sergeant at an elementary campus on either side. Maybe you could talk to that.
Sure. My thought behind that would be, of course, the decision of where they would go would be totally dependent upon the sheriff's determination, but it's a strategic step to take to basically put an officer, or at least the sergeant, at an elementary campus, because currently if you have a sergeant, you don't want to put him at a high school. You already have that coverage. You already have 2 officers. So finding an elementary school that's in a strategic location where they can patrol around and move around to those elementary schools in that feeder pattern was the idea behind that.
And it would be a different elementary school, perhaps Monday than Tuesday?
That could be. That would be up to the sheriff's department based on how they decide to strategically patrol. But ideally, the objective would be to have an officer looking at the map and determining where coverage is and where some of the gaps may be to close the response time down in the event that they had to move around to different campuses.
I think what we were originally thinking was that we might be able to give them a home base at one particular elementary school, but then they would be used to patrol. They're not going to be sitting in an office at that elementary campus 5 days a week, but that would be their home base, and then they would use that opportunity to then patrol wherever need be. It might be through other elementary campuses or responding to emergencies. So the fact that they might actually be at that particular elementary campus, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that they wouldn't be at that elementary campus 100% of the time. It was just a centralized base.
And we heard that earlier from a parent speaking about the vulnerability of elementary campuses without, don't see any officers there. So if there's a way to accommodate them so they could be placed at different times, so it looks like they're, covering them, they'd have to be 100%. All right. So anyway,
Yeah.
Ms.
Well,
Greer, you
and
had
so I
another-
guess, that
the
was my
second one.
first one. So I guess when you go, and I don't know if you're going to that meeting also, but I mean, I guess just kind of work that through with them, because then the other thing is, as parents come and talk, they'll be, that elementary school has, why do we have two elementary schools that have officers on them and not the others? So I just want us to kind of be aware that we'll get that kind of PR problem if they're housed there all the time. And we may still want to go and do it that way. I'm not saying that. We need to be cognizant of that's the issue that's going to come out of that.
And I think this came, just one more, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, just one more bit of logic behind that is currently our sergeant is staffed in Georgetown.
Right.
So it was more of a how do we get the people that we're paying for actually staffed at our campuses. And, it could move to go back to an administration central location, but again, that would result in an increased response time.
Right, and it may be that they have, there's a way station. I know they have a substation in my neighborhood. But it wouldn't necessarily be at an elementary school. I mean, it would be close to the elementary school. That's a little more political. I'm just sort of throwing that out there because, I don't know, that'd be a few more emails. So my only other thing was on page 3, when we said at the top, we'll be expected to attend district-provided training classes. Can we change that to encouraged?
So the reason behind this language was we pay for our officers outside from the last day of school in May or whatever that is to the first day of school in August. We pay those officers to go back and work to the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. So it was an attempt to recapture the time that we're already paying for them to provide training and resources through that time.
And I think when I met with Chip Ryle, Deputy, if I can get it out, it's kind of late.
Deputy Chief Ryle.
Thank you. I don't think they're opposed to that, but I guess my only thinking was if we say expected and say there's a TCOL training at the same time in August that we're having our teacher training prior to school starting, I wouldn't want us to have said, oh, your deputies have to come to our training when it would be kind of for us too, but it's something the sheriff. So I guess I would just rather it be encouraged. And
I hear what you're saying, and I think also, and if we were going to offer a training, we'd hopefully offer it a few different times so they could avoid this type of conflict.
And I think
I go back to one of the key components, essential components that the task force gave us was that they wanted the SROs and staff and everyone else who's on campuses to increase and required training beyond minimum law requirements for staff and law enforcement personnel. So if we're going to, we can't just encourage it, we have to require it. That is one of the essential components.
So
that we need to
the training, I think,
honor.
just needs to be discussed because they do get a significant amount of training through NASRO. So let me read to you some of the classes that they take through NASRO. Child and Adolescent Development and Psychology. That seems pretty relevant. Mental Health and Crisis Intervention. Seems pretty good. De-escalation techniques and techniques for limiting the use of force. Again, good one. Mental health and behavioral needs of children with disabilities or special needs. Restorative practices and positive behavioral interventions. Racial profiling, cultural diversity. These are all hitting the nail on the head. I don't want to run the danger of saying, oh, but our mental health training is better. And,
And I did go through that list that you have. I know where you got it, and I did go through that list. And some of these trainings, maybe you can talk to that because I had the same conversation with Mr. Yarborough about it. Can you talk a little bit about that training list and how some of them are one-time trainings and some of them are annual? Remember that conversation we had?
When you talk about NASRO, they offer two options. You have a basic NASRO training course that you take, then you have the advanced NASRO. The cultural diversity and the racial profiling, those are trainings that you take if you have a basic and intermediate license. Once you get your advanced and your master's, you're not required to have those. So it depends on what trainings that you're looking at to determine where you want to provide that training at what point in the school year. For example, sometimes, with NASRO training, they only provide that training during the summer, so you have to make sure that you've blocked out that time for those deputies to go and get that training. Some of the deputies have already had the basic and the advanced. They've got advanced certification. So ideally, you would want those deputies to find additional training that's consistent with what you're looking for in a school district, like mental health first aid or disruptive student management or beyond diversity training. Those options exist over the summer as well. So you want companion training that is not repetitive training, that you're getting exactly the same thing over. For example, I've got advanced NASRO. If I go next year, I'm getting the exact same training, which is not giving me a leg up in any way. I'm just getting warmed over training that I've already had, the same training over and over. Whereas there are other options out there that are ideal for school policing that would be much better to build on. Like school-based law
Obviously, we want
enforcement.
them well-trained and
Yes.
not to receive the same training over and over again. I'm just saying this will probably be a point of negotiation, and we should be open-minded, as should they.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think the other really significant part that I really wanted to make sure everybody, I mean, I'm sure you all did your homework, but in number 10, where we actually listed out the scope of what the essential duties are for sergeants, it's not something that we've ever had before, and we, not always are aware of exactly what's going on with the sergeant that's assigned to us. And so I thought it was important to really have a job description for who's going to be in that position for us. And I think the only one in this one is to make sure there's a lot of the same language. I went over that even the sergeants are not to serve as disciplinarians and things like that. So, yeah. And the one big section that I did add, other than the essential duties for the sergeant, was number 13, which is the jurisdictional issues. So if you read that one, there has been some discussion about jurisdictional issues and making sure that if we do go with a contract with Williamson County, that they're going to be able to enter all of the areas that our schools are.
Canyon Vista being in Travis County.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I see from here is, and what I would like for to happen is for us to approve this to allow for some negotiations, because I feel like if we don't have a voice from the board and we just table it, then we're left hanging with the direction of where we're supposed to go.
I liked it. I thought it was detailed. I liked the way you highlighted it. You spelled out the years. Some of these, and again, I have a question back for Doug. I don't know why it's confidential. I don't know why the public can't see it. There's nothing in here that shows why there's any vulnerability to our campuses. So I'd like for you to look at this at some point and see if later on we could make it public.
So I think when I was asked the question, it was a document in formation, and so as a matter of open records, public information, when you're developing a document and it's in draft form, you don't necessarily have to make it public. And because of the subject matter, I wasn't involved with it directly, so I'm as I said, a step removed. I wasn't sure if there were sensitive issues that were having to be worked on this end and then, to be negotiated with the other party.
Okay. I'm willing to go forward with this and to give direction to go negotiate or at least explore it with the...
So let's get specific. Who, what, when?
Yeah. Okay.
And just make sure, we're still, because what we said that when we send this to them, we have an expectation that we're going to get an answer by December. Is that right? Or was it November or December?
To the Commissioner's Court.
Yeah, they're going to make this, and so we can take appropriate action
Right. So
otherwise.
So I just asked Doug about this, modifying it so that it's a motion for the draft version
Okay.
of this,
I like that.
and then instead of as discussed, just for further negotiation. If
Say
everyone
say
is-
that one more time.
Approve this draft version and so we can do it for further negotiation.
Well, I think the issue there is the Commissioners Court isn't going to hear anything if it's in draft form. And so, so they need to see us actually take an action for them to even, because I'm not going to, I want to speak for them, but we're giving them, if we say it's a draft, we're giving them an out to come back and say, well, until you actually approve it, we're not going to even consider it.
Right now, the step is to go to back to Chief Ryle and Sheriff, right, and have him look at this before we vote on it. Is that the way I understand it?
I think all the negotiation has to happen between now and our November board meeting, and we have to decide whether or not we want to push it forward at the November board meeting.
Right. So this is just to say, you've got consensus and a vote from this board tonight to go to Chief Ryle and Sheriff Chody, whoever.
That everybody
That's
here.
what you were asking for, right?
Everybody here stands behind. Actually,
Yes.
I was ready to take this to the next level and present it to the Commissioners Court and develop have them give us the updated Attachment A. I don't think Attachment A, as it sits with this, the documents that you have right here, I don't think Attachment A is correct. So I think if we're going to approve anything, I would approve minus Attachment A, because this is all antiquated and I don't have that information, but I would expect that would be given back to us as to what a revenue-neutral contract would include.
Could we get Attachment A from the sheriff?
I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
who.
Well, I think we're all on the same page that we want the most current Attachment A.
Yeah. Okay. So with that,
Well, I guess now
I say we just wait. We get the feedback that we need. We get the additional information that we need. We're going to meet next week again on Thursday.
but I don't want to bring this up and discuss it. We've got a busy. I would say I like the wording of your proposal. It says this is a strong commitment from this board. It's not binding, but it gives the sheriff and the chief strong support that we're behind going to the next step. So it's.
Does that?
I'm
I guess
happy.
that's what I thought you were saying earlier.
I am happy approving this. If I didn't see any major changes or anything that you wanted scratched out, so I'm happy approving this, and then have someone give us what the cost revenue would be to do this.
I'm okay. I like that too. And I would say if you have a meeting it's set up and it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act, that if Mr. Moses or Ms. Gonzalez can't attend, that somebody else can go with you. That's fine.
Yeah, now that we've all talked about it, I think anybody else could attend in their two places.
The sooner the better. So that'd be
Yeah.
my preference.
So the likelihood of them looking at this and saying, "Oh, looks good," is pretty low. They're going to push back. Some of the pushbacks will probably be small wording changes that we'll be good with. I don't know. Some of the pushbacks may be unacceptable. If they say, "Well, we're not going to staff schools on Fridays," that's clearly unacceptable. But then there will probably be some in the middle that we may have disagreements on this board, and we're going to have to address that in November.
But I guess, but are we still all in agreement that if we do not receive an up or down vote, approval, whatever you want to call it, from the Commissioners Courts before our December meeting, we're moving forward with other options? Because that's what we all have talked about and agreed upon.
Yeah, I think we need to get the final wording agreed upon at our November meeting and have it go to the Commissioners Court in December for them to vote on.
Well, it could even go.
So what if I have a meeting with Sheriff Chody next week, and he says, "Yeah, I'm good. I can get it to the Commissioners Court next week if you guys approve this." I mean, there's
The faster
no need.
the better.
There's no
we could
need
have a
to have
special
to wait.
meeting. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't call a
3
special
days,
meeting.
you need 72 hours. As long as we've got a quorum, we could vote on it. If that would be great, that'd be a great situation to be in. So,
And then just one more thing. I know originally after the last meeting, I thought we were going to have either more discussion or action on the, again, I know you're looking at the TCOL process, what we need to do for our own police department. So we had that already running through the system. If in case they said no, then we were already still where we need to be. They said yes, great, cancel all that, send it away, we're going to go this route. I mean, are we still on track for that? And that way, I don't want us to keep falling behind. Our kids' safety is too important for us to keep just waiting on a commissioner's court that doesn't represent a big portion of our district.
At this point, we have done nothing as a district to start the process of even considering a police department without clear direction from the board. That's something we haven't discussed at all.
So it was my understanding after the last meeting that we gave the board, the board had direction that we wanted to at least look at a proposed staffing.
I recall that as well.
Yeah.
So we can move forward with that and get it on the next.
We have the framework that a year and a half ago that we had. We just need to update the numbers because salaries have changed and positions have changed, and there are many different ways to establish, how many officers and where do they go and that sort of thing. So with the direction of the board, we have that model that we presented a long time ago.
And you got the proposal, the in-depth proposal from the task force back on the
And
September.
did you help with that, the staffing part of that?
No, ma'am.
Between those two, that's a good framework to at least start with, right?
So could we have a presentation on that at the next board meeting, Dr. Flores, about what a proposed staffing module would be and updated salary, and kind of at least be working in concert so whatever happens with this, we're not, okay, now what do we do? Yep. And we're ready to at least take the next step. So we're doing this in concert.
My hope is that at the December board meeting, we're either got the thumbs up and we're all good on this one, or that we are moving forward with a long-term viable solution. That is through our own PD. And other items too we're going to
If Wilco is no longer an option, we need a plan B.
Right. My hope is that December meeting can be the point where a decision is made, and this can now be handed over to administration either way to implement and start working on, and then we can keep moving on talking about student outcomes.
I did want to say one more thing. At our last meeting, I did voice some concerns about a PD and why I preferred the Wilco option. I just really spoke about our side of the equation, but I did want to go on record in saying that if we could work toward a cost-neutral win-win, it's important to look at the win from the other side of the equation. Whether it's Round Rock Police or Wilco Sheriff, they're responsible for the safety in our schools regardless. I mean, if there's something going on, someone calls 911, they're there. So, one advantage is, wouldn't it be advantageous if they had an officer that was there that knew the students, knew who had
knew the hallways,
mental health issue, knew who was going through a tough family situation. And then additionally, you think of, when is crime the highest? During the summer. When do most people take vacations? During the summer. So isn't it nice to have all these 27 SROs who aren't just SROs, they're regular deputies that could fill in, so that even if someone's up in Jarrell taking vacation, Officer Willoughby could fill in and be on the beat up there. So there are synergies that I would hope that the Commissioner's Court would recognize in making their decisions.
Yeah, before I answer the question, I'd rather you restate because I want to know what's clearly expected from administration, because what I don't want to have happen is that people then make the assumption that the district's already made this determination when in fact I purposely have said to staff, stay away from this discussion. That's why I've said nothing to this point. So I just give me some clear parameters and we'll do what we need to do. I do before you. So as you think about the clear parameters, how long does TCOL application that other districts would then have? Let's say District A across the state is thinking about it, And so how long would a T-COLE application take? I think we talked about that before.
It's not uncommon to hear the number of 6 months being about an average.
Microphone.
To at least get the accreditation. Okay. It's not uncommon to hear across the state that to get the accreditation process alone done would take approximately 6 months or so.
So 6 months puts us, June?
Yes, sir.
And so that's just an application. Then
Yes, sir.
one of the first things you do is hire a chief.
Yes, sir.
And then that takes another 6 months. So now you're halfway. I mean, the timing for this and then the hiring of that number, I mean, that we can work that. But again, and the conversation here tonight is something, again, the expectation is for the Commissioners Court to make a decision. What happens if they don't make a decision in December? Because if they don't make a decision in December, then we're really perilously looking at a June impossibility of June 2021.
And this is why, going back to the spring, I've been asking us to move in consort with what this is, what the task force has been doing, what this is, because I support what is in this document. I think that it is whatever we end up doing, this is a great outline for what it needs to be like from a training standpoint, from a role responsibility standpoint, from a staffing standpoint. And if the Commissioners Court approved this, I'd be over the moon. But I don't expect it. I don't think they're going to. So I would hope that in the meantime, and maybe it is even by November, not with the update, but let's keep the momentum going on other options so we don't tie one hand or cut one hand off and we're left with just we got to hope and pray this works. We need, because we do have schools that we know, and this isn't, don't get me wrong, we don't have time to get a PDF and run to solve this, but we have campuses that are uncovered. We have campuses that come the first year are going to be uncovered. How are we going to be explaining to people that we have really not taken any concrete action to be prepared for those incidences? We haven't. We've been just working on this and letting other people dictate our school safety, security future to us instead of taking ownership of it. And this is a really big issue that we need to actually, I think, be more proactive on and not be reactive to the county. But that's just my opinion.
So
but I do
it
stand
goes-
by what's in here. I do think this is
Okay.
a great outline for whatever we end up doing.
So it goes back to what you asked, Amber, was to say get at least a preliminary draft based on what you'd done a year and a half ago and what we heard back on September 9th.
So an update from the year-and-a-half presentation.
Yes.
Well, or, I mean, I guess here's, can I make just a concrete suggestion? So, Amber, I would like to go with you. Can we schedule next week, try to schedule for next week a meeting at the Sheriff's Department? We'll do that. And then you know what the application is going to be asking, right? I mean, if you could almost start on it. I mean, what are those pieces? Is it that draft that we saw a year and a half? If it is, then yeah, that's what we need to see. But
I if
if
think,
it's
yeah,
not, if there's other information.
If y'all just
that needs to
direct
be
Dr.
done.
Flores on what you want, we'll start the ball rolling on that. It's an update of what we have, but let him know.
I
and
would
he'll-
like to
he'll
start
direct
the
us.
application process
Yes.
so that when we get whatever our deadline is with the Commissioners Court, if that comes to a close, we are ready to submit the next day our application.
Yeah, or close. So yeah, if you could, if it's just random, another 45-minute presentation that's not going to go to the application, I don't know that any of us want to see that. We want to see like the
What's going
steps.
on in the application,
Yeah.
yes, and I completely agree.
Okay, so that's
So we have consensus that while we're running this route, we also want the district to
You can
start
start
the
that.
application gathering.
Information.
I'm not even using the right language,
Yes.
but whatever
Inf-
it takes to prepare for the application and
And there's
Some
no,
of the-
it's not
I-
a commitment to what we're saying. It's not a commitment that that's the direction we're going, just for clarification for the public, so.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody, part of and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the process and that takes time is the MOUs that you have to have with all the jurisdictions in which we're in, because we have to have agreements with all the law enforcement agencies
So
around
the
us,
city
right?
of Round Rock, the city of
The county,
Austin.
Travis County, city of Austin, city of Round Rock, city of Cedar Park, anywhere that
And this is all stuff that's brand new, or can we use the existing agreements and MOUs that we've been using?
well, we don't have MOUs with them because
Well, we've been doing, we have an MOU with the sheriff and the police.
right,
Okay.
in ACC, yeah.
And the reason why, as a school district, you would be, whoever your chief is, once they start the process of developing those MOUs with agencies, the law says that you will have jurisdiction in any area where your school is located. So you have schools in Williamson County, you have schools in Travis County. So the difference is the challenge comes with Williamson County. Their jurisdiction isn't in Travis County, so they would have to work on those MOUs with Travis County to see if there's even a possibility of them covering those schools. So the difference is, as a school district, you would have those. So anywhere your schools are, you would have to have MOUs with that local jurisdiction.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't think we need a motion then. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I don't think we need a motion. I think you and I will try to get together and schedule a meeting, and then they have their marching orders.
The only thing with the motion is it gives you something that says the board has voted to support this.
Say that again?
I said that the thing with the motion is it says the board is supporting this document that they're going
This
to go talk
draft,
to.
okay, so I'll do the draft one
Okay. Yep.
for further negotiation, and then, Amber and I will have that to take with us. Is that okay?
I don't like the word draft. I think that we take this revised interlocal agreement, and then if we have to negotiate, then we come back with what a negotiated response is from the county. I think we approve this. If everybody here supports this,
Well, I
then-
guess I would still be a little bit on the wording, but I would want to talk to the sheriff about it on those two issues.
and that's what I think we take what we've approved, and then we negotiate with them, and then we come back and say, okay, this is what the county is willing to accept. But if I take it as a draft, then I don't really have any. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that we support this, and then we take it to the county, and then the county says,
I'm okay with either wording. I like it's not binding. The reason I like the word binding, it doesn't bind us with the draft. But I understand your view too. It's fine if we. Anyway,
I just have one quick question. This is a 5-year agreement. Should we have an agreement that just adds a year on every year? I mean, you've all seen agreements like that with an evergreen type provision that just is perpetual. Is that preferable?
it's fine. But
Negotiable, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. President?
Yep.
I move to approve the board's revised interlocal agreement for Round Rock Independent School District in Williamson County for school resource officers as discussed.
second.
I have a motion to approve the board approve the revised interlocal agreement for Round Rock Independent School District and Williamson County for school resource officers as discussed. This is to go forward. This is not committing us because we
can
can't do
always
anything.
re-adopt
This
it,
is
yeah.
this is just showing that we like this as a good forward. So anyway, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Just real quickly, I want to thank Trustee Feller for putting this together and working with staff on this. Originally tonight, I was very apprehensive of this. I was been going back and forth for several days on how I thought moving forward because I just basically we've received letters, comments from the county about what their intent is. But hearing tonight the conversation from the dais about the commitment to moving forward with other options as well to make sure we're prepared in the event that this is rejected makes me feel much more comfortable agreeing to this. So I want to thank the board for giving that direction to staff to start moving that process along so they can go side by side. Thank y'all.
Okay. A motion, a second. The motion as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 6-0. All right, that's a big step. So it's not guaranteed either way, so just for clarification to the public, it's a good step in the right direction. All right. One more thing here, I think. Go to agenda item J2. Consideration of proposals to review policies, processes, and procedures for resolving complaints. So with that, Mr. Ponick, would you give us a quick recap of what we have
In
presented to
the
us?
brief time since we last met, and this was requested by the board, I reached out to 4 firms to submit request proposals in a short period of time within the limited parameters that the board had included in its motion. And so you have before you 3 proposals. A 4th firm did not submit one, though we understood that they were going to, but it just never happened. So you have the 3 proposals that were delivered to each of you on Monday. These are, I was looking for firms that had obviously significant school law experience, not necessarily ones that had done any work with this district. I thought it might be good, again, to just sort of have some for the sake of independence, someone who had little or no experience with the district. I think Rogers, Morrison, Grover may have had is presently or has done some work for the district, but it's been in an entirely different arena. And the person from that firm that would be doing this work has not done work for the district and would be, have no history with this district. I tried to communicate on behalf of the board that we were trying to have this done in a rather succinct manner within certain cost parameters, and so you have the hourly rates, and you have from the three of them an estimation of, well, you have two of them that say they have a not to exceed number of $10,000. That's not a figure that I quoted. It just it's curious that they both came back with that. And then you have a third firm that had estimated 25 to 30 hours, which I just did the math with. And they said if you go with the person with the higher rate, then that's about $8,750 to $10,500, and the lower cost attorney would get you a range of $73.75 to $88.50 in terms of total cost, and that's more of an estimation. They did not state it in specific terms.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed.
Yep.
So,
Mr. Matt.
I'm just going to throw out a motion. I thought that based on the proposals, KBS was the most comprehensive. They're local. They had a not to exceed, and the rates were competitive. So I move to approve the proposal from KBS to review policies, processes, and procedures for resolving complaints as discussed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve KBS to review the policies, processes, and procedures for resolving complaints as discussed. And I saw three of these. Thank you for putting these together or reaching out. I don't know how many you reached out to. You said 4, and one didn't respond. They all look great to me. I like the not to exceed. And again, the general view is this is prompted by the early college, high school complaints that came in that we were not supposedly aware of. So that's the basis of this, but it's not limited to that. It's just the policies, processes, and procedures for resolving complaints as discussed. Am I understanding all of that right?
Right, and just to reiterate, it's not to look into specific investigations or specific matters, but to look at your processes. I think it's okay for them to test against, like we've heard that this may have been an issue, so what do we do in that scenario? I think that that's appropriate, but this is not intended to look into a specific series of complaints and drill down into everything that happened with those complaints.
And thank you, Ms. Ponick, for making that clear, because I think that I want to make that one clear, that situation, because there's a lot of facts that are still being gathered, as well as to other campuses, to know that, hey, this is really for a district-wide view of our policies and how we handle any situation where somebody brings forward an issue. So, thank you.
I agree. I'm not. This isn't to resolve that particular complaint on that campus, but the process. And all right, we have a motion, and a second for KBS. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to say that I had reached out to Doug, and because I had been kind of seeing some things that I think maybe need to be looked into in terms of our process. So maybe some holes that that I'm identifying just based on the feedback that we've been getting, and what Doug said was just to share with them what we're seeing, so that they could have a sense of the things to also consider during their investigation.
Right, just to make sure that this work speaks to you, the questions you may have. I think it's okay for you to say, I've heard this kind of thing is happening. Can you look at that? But it should be done in the context of the board action.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second for KBS. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. All right, let's go to agenda item K1, Facilities and Finance Committee report. Ms. Weir.
I'll be super quick. So the Facilities Committee met on October 4th, and as you heard, we had a review of the bond sale. We also had a presentation on the aquatics facility, and we started our discussion about school capacities. We had a lot of people come. It might shock you to know that capacities was a big topic.
Shocking.
We also discussed some capital projects, and we looked at an overview of a new organizational chart for augmenting some staff. in the facilities department, which is going to be coming our way. We're going to narrow our scope a little bit on the capacities. Elsa England is going to be at the top. We've also got 35, and there are some middle school feeder patterns we're going to look at trying to clean up so that kids stick with their middle school cohorts up into high school and not have small groups that get split off. Try to clean some of that up. And then the other thing that we discussed right at the end and is kind of exciting is FF&E and a refresh of furniture at the campuses. And so that hopefully soon maybe we'll be bringing to the full board.
Okay.
Mr. Worcester's
Okay.
nodding his head, so that's good.
All right, thank you. And I think you're talking about vertical alignment for the vertical alignment is what we call it.
Right, but
The
we're really
three-
just going to look right now at middle school to
Okay.
high school.
I think that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. It's one thing that has always been on my, it's kind of like I don't want to do another bond study without capacity and boundaries, which word, it's another word. It's not a pleasant word, but it has to be done eventually. So, all right, thank you. Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quick, actually, this month, due to I was having a meeting 2 weeks ago, tonight, next week, we talking with Trustee Vessa and Gonzalez. We decided, I know we're going to take this month off and just focus on the meetings that we have already scheduled. But moving forward, one note that is very exciting is that at our last meeting, we sent, as you know, AE Local to the DAC and to the Equity Task Force to review. Last night, I went to the Equity Task Force meeting just to hear their conversation. It was really great. And so we look forward to getting their notes back on that to make sure as we look at our educational philosophy, we're looking at through the equity lens. We are looking at November 4th as our next meeting, and so hopefully to have, and we're going to get that verified with the members, make sure we're all good there, but hopefully have those comments back by then to review, as well as, I know I spoke to Mr. Hodebeck about the sustainability policy, so seeing if we can have some conversation around that or what we can do moving forward, as well as I also know there were some comments about public comment and the new changes to the law. The good news is that TASB has come out with a new policy update about that policy. So we're going to be reviewing what TASB's recommendations are to make sure that we are in line with what the new law is.
Because they get to say anything they want about us now.
I get it.
That's fine. And so I want to make a comment also. Thank you for putting the bond oversight, the equity task force on the board calendar that we can see. Sometimes I can make it, sometimes I can't, but at least I know I'd like to be able to plan that. PTA, anything that we're doing. So please continue doing that and add everything you can on that. So let's see. I do want to say, you had a golf tournament last week, is that right? So they raised how much?
We raised like $125,000. Did not play it well, but it was fun.
Okay.
And and then I had one more comment, one more thought popped in my brain, because actually last night at the task force we were talking about the board goals. So it's how that applies flows through policy, and I'm sure they're online somewhere. We couldn't find them, so can we post our new board goals on the board page of the website? Just so they're there so people can find them. I know we just adopted them, so it just may not have been updated yet.
And all of our progress measures. And
Just have something. I think goals. I'm not going to tell them how to design the website, but they don't do that. But just have it there where the public can go.
Absolutely, I think that's a really, really important. I was going to suggest that too, that we not only post the board goals, but also as we go through our goal progress measure calendar, that those are posted there too, so that people can track how we're doing in terms of achieving our goals.
Okay. With that, any other requests, future agenda items or anything? Other announcements? Hearing none. Move to adjourn. It is 11:27.